Chapter 1337. After the discussion about the harvest festival, everyone dispersed and went about their own business. Noah, on the other hand, returned to his room and began the long-awaited update of his ability value. Noah Doria LV. For strength, SSS, 1757, SSS, 2000, durability, SSS, 1758, SSS, 2000, dexterity, SSS, 1755, SSS, 2000, agility, SSS, 1760, SSS, 2000, magic, SSS, 1743, SSS, 2000, mystery, GF magic, GF swordsman, GF magic weapon refining steel making magic duplicate, refine, and forge weapons duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Duplicate, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a long time according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Protection of sword permanent magic permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the contracted spirit. Contract spirit as a sword spirit, obtain the protection of the sword spirit, and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold smelting quick attack magic make the target gradually turn into steel. Successful tempering will crush it. Tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills protection from the world permanent skill equal to luck events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. When the data of the ability value update was fed back to Noah's mind, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were filled with excitement. It's finally time to level up. Yes. It's finally time to level up. When Noah's proficiency in omnipotence had reached 2,000 points, he would be qualified to level up. As long as he obtained enough experience points to be called a great achievement, then Noah could level up to LV5. LV5. That's not as simple as just leveling up. You know, in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, LV, for known as the second level adventurer, LV, level 5 was known as the number 1 adventurer. It was upgraded to LV. With a level of 5, one would have the qualifications to be called an expert. And to level up to LV, Noah had already gathered 5 great achievements. He had defeated one of the strongest star elves, Argel. He defeated the demon king, Pest, who was a deity. This level of achievement was definitely enough to be called a great achievement. Now, all that's left is to choose how to develop my abilities. Developing abilities. This was a passive special ability that could be added to one's ability value whenever one's level increased. Of course, this didn't mean that he could obtain it every time he leveled up. Whether or not one could obtain the ability to develop depended entirely on one's accumulated experience points and the actions one had taken. For example, those who frequently forged weapons and armor would be able to develop the ability to smelt. For example, those who frequently concocted potions and medicines would be able to develop the ability of harmonization. If he didn't gain enough EXP, even if he leveled up, he wouldn't be able to develop his abilities. On the other hand, as long as he obtained a suitable amount of experience points, he would be able to choose from multiple abilities. This time, Noah was able to obtain a total of 3 abilities to develop. These 3 abilities were respectively Fist Punch, Shatter, and Abnormal Resistance. Among them, Fist Punch was an ability that could only be obtained by fighting barehanded for a period of time. The effect of this ability was very simple. It was to increase one's attack power during barehanded combat. It was likely that Noah had met the condition to obtain this ability after fighting with reverse 16 knights for a long period of time. As for Shatter, it was an ability that could only be obtained after going through large-scale destruction. Noah felt that the opportunity to obtain this ability should be due to his experience in the previous world when he used thunder to transform the entire Lien cult nation into ruins. The effect of this ability was also very simple. It could increase the destructive power of all of the user's attacks. As for Abnormal Resistance, it was an ability that could possibly be obtained after undergoing the baptism of negative powers such as poison and weakness to a certain extent. During the battle with Pest, Noah had indeed stayed in the vortex of the Black Death virus for quite some time. Thus, he was able to obtain this ability to resist abnormal states. Then, which of the three abilities should he choose? First, I have to eliminate abnormal states. Since I have a physique that is immune to all negative powers, there is no need to add this ability, said Noah as though he was talking to himself. So, should I choose between Fist Punch and Shatter? The former could increase one's attack power during barehanded combat. The latter could increase the destructive power of all attacks. Regardless of which one it was a very useful ability. However, if one were to ask which one Noah was more inclined to choose, then, Shatter, concluded Noah. I already have Swordsman, which can increase the attack power and defense of sword-type weapons. There is no need to increase the attack power of barehanded combat. Noah's combat style was rather varied. Among them, although he had barehanded combat, he was not proficient in it. In a situation where he really needed to go all out, he would not have the opportunity to use it. No matter what, Noah's attainments in barehanded combat were only limited to some martial arts styles that he had learned in the world of the Black Bullet. It was not considered a high level at all. Noah's true skill lay in his swordsmanship. After all, compared to the martial arts that he had learned in the world of the Black Bullet, swordsmanship was a skill that Noah had honed for many years since he was young. In addition, he had also learned the ultimate sword skill. In terms of skills, Noah could only be said to have reached the acme of perfection in swordsmanship. Barehanded combat only involved some martial arts. Even if he was not a layman, he was definitely not an expert. Therefore, in a situation where he already had the swordsman ability, there was no need to add the fist punch ability. On the other hand, Shatter can increase the destructive power of any attack, including swordsmanship and weapons. I believe that even the attack method of using a large number of noble artifacts and the true name release of noble artifacts should be included, right? Therefore, Noah made his decision. All right. It's decided then. After a while, Noah's new ability value status came out. Noah Dole LV. 5 Strength, SSS, 2000, A, 865, Durability, SSS, 2000, A, 877, Dexterity, SSS, 2000, A, 880, Agility, SSS, 2000, A, 888, Magic, SSS, 2000, A, 866, Mystery, F Magic, F Swordsman, F Shatter, I Magic, Weapon Refinement Steel Making Magic Copy, Refine, and Forge Weapons Copy. Refine and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Copy, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained for a long time depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection Permanent Magic Permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the Contract Spirit. Contract Spirit as a Sword Spirit, obtain the protection of the Sword Spirit and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening will increase or decrease according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold Smelting Quick Attack Magic make the target gradually turn into steel. If the tempering is successful, it will be crushed. The tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills Protection from the World Permanent skill equal to luck. Events that have a direct relationship with luck will eventually lead to the most favorable results. Clenching his fist, Noah felt the substantial improvement brought by the upgrade, and the corner of his mouth slowly raised. Chapter 1338. The outer door of Box 2105380, the base of the community, no name. Pung. Following the sound of a muffled explosion, in an open space some distance away from the no name library, a burst of thick sand and dust rose into the air, floating towards the gradually darkening sky. A gentle breeze blew past, gradually carrying away the thick sand and dust that rose into the air, leaving a crater that looked like it was hit by a meteorite. And in the middle of this crater, Noah maintained his posture of punching the ground, slowly straightening his body. With slow movements, he slightly opened and closed his hands, feeling the strength flowing through his body. Noah nodded with great satisfaction. With my current physical ability, I reckon that I can easily suppress Hercules in the form of a servant, right? His ability value rose to LV. After reaching 5, Noah's strength, durability, dexterity, agility, and magic, a total of 5 basic abilities, had a qualitative leap. In the past, Noah had estimated that if his ability value rose to LV, level 5, then he would be able to match Hercules in the form of a servant. Now it seems that at that time, Noah had somewhat underestimated himself. With Noah's current physical ability, not to mention matching Hercules, even suppressing him would be a piece of cake. If now, Noah and Hercules were to use their full strength to punch each other, then, the result would definitely be that Noah would not move an inch, and Hercules would be directly sent flying like a cannonball, right? This was also a matter of course. In the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, the people who received the grace bestowed by God, if they wanted to level up, not only must they have enough experience to call it a great achievement, they also needed to lay down a good foundation before leveling up. In simple terms, it was to raise all ability values to the level of D, then they would have the qualifications to level up to the next level. And the proficiency of D was only 500. In other words, when the proficiency of all ability points reached 500, that person would be qualified to level up. At this time, as long as he could achieve enough EXP to level up, he would be able to do so. But for Noah, if he wanted to level up, he had to reach the limit of his ability value. According to the data compiled by the Pantheon in the past 1,000 years, the proficiency limit of the ability points could only reach 999, which was the S stage of the ability points. However, if Noah wanted to level up, he had to surpass this limit and reach the 2,000 proficiency points that could not be increased anymore, which was the SSS stage. This was a realm that no one could reach. Only Noah, who Hastia said had terrifying possibilities, could reach. Only by reaching this realm would Noah be qualified to level up. Every time I level up, the basic ability proficiency of the ability value will all return to 0. However, the basic ability of the previous level does not disappear. Instead, it is kept as a hidden ability, Noah muttered to himself. So, after leveling up, even if all the basic abilities of the ability value decrease, the actual ability is much stronger than before. Now, Noah was fully aware of this reality. Although all the ability points had decreased to the A stage, that was LV. A stage of level 5 was much stronger than LV, SSS stage of level 4 was much stronger. After all, since it was called leveling up, it had almost the same meaning as being reborn. If before, I still needed to use enhance magic to strengthen my physical ability, and then use Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet to increase my strength in order to fight with 16 knights, then now, I definitely don't need to do that. Noah clenched one of his fists, his eyes shining brightly. Now that I have reached LV 5, and all the ability points are at the A stage, I don't need to use Red Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet to increase my strength. I only need to use enhance magic to strengthen my strength, and then I can match 16 knights' terrifying physical ability. This was LV 4 and LV. The difference between 5. Of course, this difference only existed for Noah. From LV 1, he leveled up to LV. At this stage of 5, every time Noah leveled up, he leveled up to the SSS stage of 2,000 ability points. Others, on the other hand, could only level up to the D stage of 500 ability points. Under such circumstances, according to the rules of leveling up, every time after leveling up, although the ability points and ability points would all return to 0, the ability points of the previous level would not disappear. Instead, it would be preserved as a hidden ability. Noah leveled up to the limit every time he leveled up, and the ability points of the previous level were preserved to this day. One could imagine how terrifying it was. Therefore, Noah could be sure that even if it was called Eulalia's ultimate weapon, the only LV 7 Oda, it was not to this extent. Even if all other factors were removed, and Noah and Oda were assumed to be ordinary people with the same physical ability, then, after going through several levels, the ability points of the ability points were raised to the SSS stage of 2000 and above, and it was preserved as a hidden ability. Noah only needed to level up to LV 4, he could level up to LV 7 ability points comparable to Oda. Therefore, based purely on the ability points increase, he could level up to LV5. Noah undoubtedly surpassed Oda in all aspects. After leveling up, Noah had absolute confidence that he did not need to use the Scarlet Dragon Emperor's Gauntlet, boosted gear, to multiply his strength. He only needed to use the Enhance Magic to strengthen himself, and then he would be able to match 16 Knights' foul physical ability. As for the development of the Fragmentation ability, currently it is only at the lowest stage of I, and the increase in destructive power is not obvious. Noah gradually grasped his current strength in all aspects. Moreover, the increase is only destructive power, and not offensive power. Even if the Fragmentation stage is increased, it will not help in fighting. Thinking of this, Noah was actually somewhat eager to give it a try. Should I call that 16 Knights guy out to play? As long as he slightly provoked that problem child, 16 Knights would definitely happily jump out and have a fight with Noah, right? However, if it really comes to that point, I reckon that problem child will not give up until the victor is decided. If that was the case, Noah felt that it would be better if he did not look for trouble. Just as Noah was preparing to return to the main hall, a shocking aura flashed within the range of Noah's detection ability. Noah's footsteps slightly paused, and he raised his head. His eyes flashed with traces of coldness. Only because that fleeting aura was mixed with the same fleeting murderous aura. That murderous aura was completely targeted at Noah. Immediately, Noah closed his eyes, and then suddenly opened them. In a flash, he flew towards the horizon. Late at night, quiet. Faint moonlight sprinkled down from the horizon, bathing the entire, no-name, base that was like a wasteland. It looked somewhat desolate, but it also seemed exceptionally calm. In this extremely calm night, a black shadow suddenly flashed out. The tip of his foot touched the ground, and his body nimbly flew to the top of a dilapidated building. It was a person covered in a black robe. Raising his head, his bright eyes faintly revealed under the black robe. The black-robed person's gaze shot straight ahead. Shio! At that moment, a stream of light flew over from the horizon and landed on the top of a dilapidated building in front of the black-robed man. It also raised its head and looked coldly at the black-robed man, who did not appear to be very tall. Two gazes suddenly collided in the night, and sparks flew. Chapter 1339. Without any reason, dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky, covering the stars and the moon in the sky, blocking all sources of light. Because the sovereignty of the stars was in the hands of the various Asura gods and Buddhas, such a situation rarely occurred in the night sky of the box court. Now, the night sky was covered by thick dark clouds, causing the entire land under the night sky to be replaced by darkness. Under such circumstances, on the top of the dilapidated building, Noah and the black-robed man stood facing each other, looking at each other. Noah, who had outstanding sensing ability, could clearly feel that the black-robed man in front of him, who was not very tall, was definitely not an ordinary character. As for why, the reason was very simple. If he was just an ordinary character, then he definitely would not have such a strong sense of presence. That kind of sense of presence, as if he was destined to rule the world, anyone who felt it would feel that the other party was not a simple character. And such an existence suddenly appeared in the base of No Name, and once released a targeted killing intent towards Noah. How could Noah not be serious? Of course, Noah did not know. Just like how Noah could clearly feel that the black-robed man in front of him was not simple, the other party also intuitively felt that Noah was not simple. No. Rather than saying that he was not simple, it would be better to say that he was extremely terrifying. Because, in the black-robed man's perception, Noah did not have his strange sense of presence, nor did he have anything special. It was as if he had integrated into the whole world, and felt that it was so natural. That posture only gave the black-robed man a feeling. That is, it was as if the whole world was standing on Noah's side. That kind of almost inconceivable feeling, until now, the black-robed man had never felt it from anyone. Even those Asura gods and Buddhas who were known as the strongest race in the box court. Under such a confrontation, the originally calm black-robed man was the first to be unable to maintain the stalemate. You are the human who defeated the Black Death Spot Demon King, right? Human? Noah narrowed his eyes and said with a smile that was not a smile. In other words, you're not human, right? Who knows? Even I don't know what I am. The black-robed man said in a tone that sounded perfunctory but also serious. Compared to that, I'm actually more interested in knowing whether or not you're a threat to us. Oh? Noah said faintly. What if he does? The black-robed man's face, which was covered by the hood, slightly raised the corners of his mouth into a dangerous arc. Then I'll kill you. At this moment, the murderous aura that had been directed at Noah not long ago expanded from the black-robed man's body. The invisible murderous aura transformed into visible airwaves, blowing around like a gale. Then, like waves, it spread in all directions, causing Noah's robes to flutter. Noah's expression did not change in the slightest as he stood amidst the wave of killing intent. He cast his gaze towards the black-robed person and suddenly smiled. You? That's right. The black-robed man smiled as well. Just me. As soon as he finished speaking, the dilapidated building under the black-robed man's feet cracked open. With a loud muffled explosion, the building under the black-robed man's feet directly cracked open, causing a shock wave. That was because the black-robed man had used an extremely powerful force to charge forward, causing a reaction force that was caused by the reaction force. As a result, the black-robed man's figure turned into a swift and violent cannonball, rubbing against the atmosphere. With a sharp piercing sound, he violently shot in the direction of Noah. That speed was almost comparable to the speed of the third universe. The distance between Noah and the black-robed man was less than 100 meters. With such a terrifying speed, the black-robed man would need less than a blink of an eye to fly in front of Noah. However, at the same time that the black-robed man turned into a cannonball and shot towards Noah, a wave-like golden ripple fluctuated out from Noah's surroundings and surrounded Noah. At this moment, the black-robed man who had turned into a swift and violent cannonball just happened to flash in front of Noah and was also surrounded by the wave-like golden ripples. The black-robed man immediately became vigilant. Without any hesitation, he stomped on the ground and quickly retreated. It was also at this moment that silver chains with resplendent golden light burst out from the wave-like golden ripples and crisscrossed the space around Noah. Just now, if the black-robed man did not choose to retreat, then he would have been bound by the Heavenlock Enkidu. However, Noah was not the kind of person who would passively endure the attacks of others. Looking at the black-robed man who did not hesitate to retreat, Noah's eyes flashed and he raised a hand. In the next moment, the wave-like golden ripples once again fluctuated in the space around Noah. Inside, a variety of treasured tools such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on came out. They trembled, and transformed into an aurora. It seemed as if a streak of resplendent golden streamer had blotted out the sky, and violently shot towards the direction of the black-robed man. However, in the next moment, Noah was finally shocked. Clang, 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 clang. Along with the crisp sound of steel colliding with steel, the treasures turned into streaks of light one by one. The treasures that had left behind glorious achievements and great reputations in various myths and legends were all bounced off one by one. Of course, if the black-robed man had used his fists or other methods to deflect the rain of relic like 16 nights in reverse, Noah would not have been so surprised. There was only one reason why Noah was shocked. That was, the precious artifacts that could pierce through any living being were all repelled by the black-robed man as if they had collided with steel when the black-robed man didn't dodge at all. Yes. They were not blocked, but when they landed on the black-robed man's body, they were bounced off. It was not that Noah had not seen the same situation before. In the past, during the Holy Grail War in the Planet of the Moon, Gilgamesh and Hercules' battle had also shown the same scene. This was because Hercules' treasures were able to nullify any attacks below grade A. When Gilgamesh used treasures below grade A to attack, they were all bounced off by Hercules' body. Now, the black-robed man was in the same situation. He did not dodge, nor did he dodge. It was as if he knew from the beginning that Noah's treasures were ineffective against him. He used his body to bounce off the treasure's rain. At that moment, Noah's eyes flashed with a sharp light that and the fluctuation of magic, there was a flickering fluorescence. Lines like electric wires spread on Noah's hands and feet, strengthening Noah's arm and leg strength. At that moment, Noah gained strength and speed that was not inferior to 16 knights. Dong! In the muffled explosion, Noah fiercely stomped on the ground. At the same time, a part of the dilapidated building was directly crushed. His body was like a bullet, carrying the whistling sound of the wind, and swept in front of the black-robed man who was retreating. His dark and deep eyes that were flickering with a sharp light met with his slightly constricted pupils. Then, both sides moved at the same time. Bang! The fist that was enough to shake up a violent shock wave landed on an arm that was raised up, causing a circle of terrifying wind waves to spread to the surroundings. The black-robed man who crossed his arms in front of his body and blocked the terrifying punch only felt an unparalleled force crazily hit his body. Immediately, the black-robed man flew out. Like a meteorite falling from the sky, in the sharp sound of a whoosh, he heavily hit the ground not far from the dilapidated building. Bang! Along with the loud roar, the black-robed man directly smashed the ground, causing the ground to sink, creating a deep pit with a diameter of more than 100 meters. Needless to say, Noah was quite lucky. Why? Because, just today, he had just leveled up and allowed his strength to take a step forward. Someone sent himself to be Noah's sandbag, helping Noah to test his strength. Could it be that this was not considered lucky? Chapter 1340. Rumble. The dilapidated building collapsed with a loud bang, raising a thick cloud of sand and dust. It was completely turned into ruins. The reason why it collapsed was because of the two attacks from Noah and the black-robed man, which caused the building itself to crack. It was only 2 attacks, but the building directly collapsed. Although part of the reason was that the building was already quite dilapidated, the main reason was that the impact caused by the 2 charges of Noah and the black-robed man caused the building itself to collapse. After passing through LV, Noah was at level 5, and his all-ability value was at the A stage. After being strengthened by enhanced magic, it was not surprising that Noah could achieve this result. However, the black-robed man who came out of nowhere also had such a terrifying physical ability, which was really surprising. And this also proved that the black-robed man was definitely not an ordinary person. Or rather, to be able to use his body to directly bounce off a noble artifact, it was enough to prove that the black-robed man was not an ordinary person. Landing in front of the huge hole, Noah waved his hand, raising a gust of wind, which blew away all the sand and dust from the hole, revealing the situation inside. In the center of the hole, the black-robed man slowly stood up, patted off the gravel and dust on his body, and then looked at Noah. Although there was no way to see the face covered by the black hood, Noah could feel it. The other party's gaze on him had already changed. To be able to suppress me like this, I didn't think that there would be such a talent in a no name. The black-robed man muttered as if talking to himself. In the beginning, I heard that there was a member in this community who had thousands of divine deity-grade weapons that defeated the demon star spirit. I didn't really believe it, until the news of the Black Death Spot Demon King being defeated by the same person reached my ears. Then I thought of meeting this person a little bit, to see the truth. The weapons that were shot at me just now did indeed have the aura of a divine deity. The black-robed man laughed and shrugged. It seems that I have no choice but to believe you. Does it matter to you whether I believe it or not? Noah looked directly at the black-robed man. In any case, as long as it's a weapon, it's useless against you, right? Oh. The black-robed man was surprised. Did you see through it? Is it that hard to see through? Noah curled his lips. I used weapons to launch a barrage of attacks at you, but I couldn't even cause you the slightest bit of damage. Instead, I was able to easily send you flying with a single punch. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to guess that you have a gift that can nullify the attacks of weapons, right? I feel that there shouldn't be anyone who can easily send me flying with a single punch in this box with less than 4 digits. The black-robed man said, but he didn't hide the fact that he agreed with Noah's reasoning. However, you're right. This body does indeed possess the blessing of invulnerability. Even a Godhead-bestowed weapon wouldn't be able to penetrate this body. Invulnerability? Noah looked at the black-robed man meaningfully. So that's how it is. No wonder you needed to avoid the heavenlock Enkidu at the beginning. It's because it's not a weapon used to attack, but a weapon used to bind you. This type of weapon should still be effective against you, right? Maybe. After all, the Black Death Spot Demon King couldn't hide from the heavenlock Enkidu. Naturally, I can't ignore the legendary level chain. The black-robed man said helplessly. Although it's not what I want, this body does have divinity. For me, I still have to be a little wary of that chain. Then, it's about time to reveal your identity, right? Noah sneered. Although it's not a secret to be able to know that I possess thousands of Godhead-ranked weapons, use it to defeat the demon star spirit, and know about the existence of the heavenlock Enkidu, it's obvious that you know the details of my battle with the Black Death Spot Demon King. It's impossible that you don't have any power behind you, right? That kind of thing isn't important anymore. The black-robed man smiled as if he didn't answer the question. I only need to know that you are indeed a difficult person to deal with. That's enough. After saying that, without giving Noah a chance to speak, the black-robed man muttered to himself. However, I originally thought that even if you really possess thousands of Godhead-ranked weapons, for me who is invulnerable, as long as I pay attention to the existence of the heavenlock Enkidu, you shouldn't be a threat. But now, it seems that even without those Godhead-ranked weapons, you aren't an existence that can be dealt with casually. To be able to easily send me flying with a punch, that proves that at least on the surface, I'm not your opponent. If I really want to kill you, I can't do it without taking out my real trump card. The black-robed man muttered. But if I take out my trump card here, it's a bit stupid. Not to mention that the Demon King of White Night is in this outer area. If I take out that kind of trump card, it will only attract the strongest star spirit. It's a bit of a miscalculation. Seeing that the black-robed man began to calculate the strength of both sides, Noah's eyes became colder and colder. Although he didn't know what kind of trump card this black-robed man was hiding, the fact that the black-robed man didn't care about Noah's existence and began to calculate his own gains and losses, it was obvious that he thought that as long as he took out his trump card, he would definitely be able to kill Noah. That extremely confident attitude made Noah suddenly laugh. I see, you can't take out your trump card? After saying such a sentence, a burst of violent magic rose from Noah's body and turned into a gust of wind, blowing in all directions. Since you don't plan to take out your trump card, then try mine. As soon as his voice fell, a solemn voice resounded throughout the entire space. For victory, quickly come before me. Immortal Sun, please bestow upon me a shining steed, a spirited steed. Bring me the light will that symbolizes your Lord. At this moment, in Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 patterns, one of the patterns suddenly lit up. Then, the sky lit up. Yes. It lit up. As if all the darkness between heaven and earth was expelled, an extremely dazzling sun parted the clouds and appeared in the sky, illuminating the entire night sky. At this moment, all the residents of the outer gate of 2105380 rushed out of the buildings one after another. Looking at the sky that was suddenly as bright as day and the sun that suddenly appeared, they fell into a clamor. Summon the sun? The black-robed man's face finally changed abruptly. Could it be that you have the sovereignty of the sun? The sovereignty of the sun. It was the same principle as the sovereignty of the demonic star that Luos once controlled and could summon the star spirit of the demonic star. That was the sovereignty of the sun. However, it was different from the demonic star. Because the sun was extremely important and had a very special status among all the stars, its sovereignty was not only one, but was divided into 24. These 24 sovereignty of the sun were divided into the following 24 types according to the celestial divisions of the 12 zodiac, and the 12 equatorial stars. The 12 sovereignty of the 12 zodiac were divided into Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, a total of 12. The 12 sovereignty of the 12 equatorial stars were divided into rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, chicken, dog, and pig, a total of 12. There were a total of 24 sovereignty of the sun, each of which allowed the holder to summon the star beast corresponding to the sovereignty of the sun. Now, the miracle that Noah displayed was almost exactly the same as the scene of the holder of the sovereignty of the sun summoning star beasts. However, the next scene made the black-robed man completely dispel this idea. That was because, within the sun that illuminated the entire horizon, a majestic white horse had quietly appeared. Neigh. The extremely loud neigh of the horse reverberated. Chapter 1341. Neigh. The horse's neigh that resounded through the sky seemed to be able to spread to any corner of the world, turning into an echo that continuously reverberated in the air. Everyone in the outer door of 2105380 looked at the divine white horse that appeared from the dazzling sun in the sky. All of them fell into a daze. As for the black-robed man, he calmed down instead. No. That's not the sun's sovereignty. In the beginning, the black-robed man thought that Noah held the sun's sovereignty of the horse among the 12 equatorial stars. Now, it seemed that the power Noah used was not the sun's sovereignty at all. After all, the sun's sovereignty of the horse is in the hands of the White Night King. The black-robed man stared at the white horse in the center of the dazzling sun in the sky. What's more, although that white horse has the power of the sun, it is not the star beast of the sun's sovereignty. That's right. The white horse that appeared in the eyes of the black-robed man was not a star beast, but a pure collection of the sun's power. In other words, although it looked like a divine white horse, the body of the divine white horse that appeared in the center of the dazzling sun was only a collection of the sun's fire, not a living body. It had no life, nor consciousness. It was just a flame from the sun that appeared in the shape of a horse. Even so, the flame from the sun was enough to burn the black-robed man's body in an instant. It only needed an instant. Noah, who stood in front of the huge pit, stared at the black-robed man with emotionless eyes as if the dazzling sun with the majestic white horse in the center was in the background. He slowly raised his hand. Fall, although the voice was extremely soft, it clearly entered the ears of the black-robed man. The black-robed man finally could not help but shout. Wait. Do you want to shatter the curtain of the box court? This sentence caused Noah's hand that was about to fall to the ground to freeze in midair. It wasn't until this moment that Noah remembered. Above the box court, there was a curtain that could dilute the sun's light, allowing vampires and other nocturnal creatures to live in the box court during the day. If the flames from the sun fell from the sky, it would definitely shatter the curtain above the courtyard. At that time, Letitia and the other nocturnal creatures would no longer be able to continue living in the city during the day. TSK. Noah couldn't help but click his tongue, and the mana in his body gradually began to converge. In the sky, at the center of the sun that illuminated the entire world, the majestic white horse turned into a burst of resplendent golden flames and merged into the sun, disappearing without a trace. However, the dazzling sun still didn't disappear, making the world as bright as day. Under these circumstances, the black-robed man had ample reason to believe. If they made Noah unhappy, the sun in the sky would still fall. We really miscalculated, the black-robed man said in a low voice, feeling heavy from the bottom of his heart. Other than the thousands of Godhead bestowment weapons, this guy can also use the power of the sun? It was just like what Noah felt. Before this, the black-robed man had never thought that he would lose to Noah. The reason was just as the black-robed man had said. He still had a hidden trump card. However, the black-robed man had obviously forgotten one thing. In this world, he wasn't the only one who could hide his strength. If he could have a trump card, others could also have a trump card. Even this white horse incarnation that showed the power of the sun was only a part of Noah's trump card. Make your choice. Noah coldly looked at the black-robed man. Are you going to take off the black robe yourself? Or am I going to take off that eyesore of a black robe? Hearing this, the black-robed man was silent for a moment, and then suddenly smiled. What? Do you really want to know my true identity? Saying such a sentence, the black-robed man opened his hand and declared. But, don't worry, now is not the time to let you know. Since you have such power, we will meet sooner or later, even if you and I don't want to, it will be the same. After saying this, the black-robed man clapped his hands. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared beside the black-robed man. It was also a black-robed man. Seeing this, Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. Before this, Noah did not notice any signs of someone approaching. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man who suddenly appeared beside the black-robed man, who was shorter than the former, spoke with a playful and dissatisfied voice. Now, are you satisfied? It was a girl's voice. Moreover, it was a very young girl's voice. Obviously, this black-robed man who suddenly appeared was a young girl. Facing the dissatisfaction of the young girl who was also wrapped in a black robe, the black-robed man bitterly laughed. Satisfied, of course I'm satisfied. At least, we know that outside of the plan, there is someone who has enough power to affect our plan, right? Well, that's true. The young girl's voice revealed a trace of cheerfulness. If that's the case, then our trip here is not in vain. That's right, this person is indeed a considerable threat to us. The black-robed man said bluntly. It's a pity that we can't do anything to him now. The young girl nodded her head in agreement. Then, she turned around and looked at Noah. She asked in a somewhat naive and provocative manner. Little big brother, you're the one who solved Little Pest's game, right? May I ask how long did you use to solve it? I only used 5 days to solve it. From the young girl's voice, Noah was able to tell that she was very satisfied with this result. Unfortunately, the young girl asked the wrong person. 5 days? Noah said indifferently. I used 5 hours. The young girl was immediately speechless. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed man immediately laughed loudly. It would appear that it is not only strength. This time, even the opponent's intelligence is extraordinary. Humph. The young girl glared at Noah in an unconvinced manner. So what? The real battle has only just begun. After saying those words, the young girl placed her hand on the black-robed man's shoulder. The black-robed man stared closely at Noah, as if he was trying to remember Noah's appearance. He left behind such a sentence. We will meet again sooner or later. You are an existence outside of the plan. After leaving behind such a sentence, the two black-robed men disappeared from their original positions at the same time. The entire place suddenly became silent. Looking at the place where the two black-robed men disappeared from, Noah did not speak for a long time. Only after a long while did he mutter. Is it the gift of space jumping? How interesting. Following Noah's mutter, the sun in the sky slowly retracted its dazzling light and gradually disappeared, allowing darkness to once again descend upon the earth. The daytime sky returned to its nighttime state. However, the thick layer of dark clouds also disappeared. Then, Noah heard it. All sorts of footsteps could be heard approaching them. In the No Name Library's chat room, Bayasha glared at Noah with an unhappy expression. What is going on? It was not just Bayasha. 16 Nights Reversal, Joyuen Flying Bird, Haruhito Masaaki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, Ren, and even Lily were all present. At the same time, they cast their gazes on Noah, their eyes full of questions. In this regard, Noah just said with an innocent expression. What do you mean, what is going on? Are you still trying to pretend? Bayasha's expression became more and more unhappy. That sun was your doing, right? The sun? Noah scratched his cheek and laughed. Why are you so sure that I was the one who did it? Nonsense, In this 2105380 outer gate, I can't think of anyone else who can use such a powerful sun's power other than you. Yasha frowned. So, don't tell me it wasn't you. Thanks to you, in order to appease those frightened residents, I took the blame. Wasn't that right? In order to reassure the residents of the outer gate, Yasha took the blame for the sun appearing at night to himself. After all, Yasha was the star spirit of the sun. For Yasha to be the scapegoat, it was the most suitable choice. Of course, if one were to say that they were not happy, there would definitely be some. Chapter 1342. Knowing that White Yiksha had taken the blame for him, Noah was startled at first, then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, that was something that couldn't be helped. Undoubtedly, 1 second ago, it was still the middle of the night, and the next second, the entire sky was bright. It was as if after midnight, not only was the sky not dark, but it suddenly became as bright as noon. No matter who it was, they would feel panic. And this kind of panic was even greater in the courtyard with all kinds of asuras. After all, no one knew if an existence like the sun god suddenly went crazy and wanted to burn the entire outer sect of 2105380 with the flames from the sun. And if a demon king who controlled the power of the sun suddenly attacked, it would be even worse. Therefore, when Noah used the incarnation of the white horse to turn the entire night into day, the panic caused in that instant almost caused the residents of the outer sect of 2105380 to flee in panic. If White Yiksha hadn't appeared in time to suppress the panic and take the blame for it, the outer sect area would have been in chaos. In this regard, Noah could only frankly surrender. Sorry. Because I was looked down on, I got too excited and accidentally went overboard. In fact, after the incident, Noah was more or less afraid. If the black-robed man hadn't blurted out a reminder to protect himself, Noah might have really used the white horse to break the curtain above the courtyard and cause a huge disaster. Don't forget, Noah's authority was fused with the limit ability. When not used, he could enter a state of self-enhancement. And when he used it, because the God Slayer had the characteristic of becoming stronger the more he fought, Noah's authority could also become stronger in battle. In other words, whether Noah used his authority or not, his authority could continue to become stronger. However, compared to the self-enhancement when not used, Noah's authority would increase faster in battle. Therefore, Noah hoped that Gaia and Alea would choose a higher-level world for him so that he could throw himself into a battle where he could use his authority and quickly increase the power of his authority. Unfortunately, it had only been a month since he came to the courtyard. Other than White Yiksha, Noah hadn't met an opponent who was worthy of him using his authority as his trump card. Even so, Noah's authority was still growing stronger. Under such circumstances, it had been about a year since Noah obtained authority in the world of the Godslayer. After such a long period of continuous strengthening, Noah's authority was much stronger than when he first obtained it. If that was the case, if he had really used the incarnation of the white horse to attack the black-robed man, not only the curtains of Hakata, even the base of No Name, would have been burnt to a crisp, right? This was also under the condition that Noah didn't use divine power that could greatly increase the power of authority, but only magic power. One could imagine what kind of disaster it would be for the outer gate of 2105380 if Noah really lost his mind in anger. In the world of the Godslayer, the reason why the relevant people in the magic world were so afraid of the Godslayer and worshipped him as the demon king was because they were worried that once he was in a bad mood, he would casually vent his anger and cause a great disaster. When he thought about how he had almost unintentionally done the same thing as Warban, Luohao, and Tony, and how he was worthy of the name of the demon king, Noah felt terrible. It was unknown if he had seen something from Noah's expression, but White Yiksha's face eased a little and he waved the paper fan in his hand. Forget it, no matter what, you didn't really make the sun set. Otherwise, if the outer gate area of the East District that I am in charge of was burned to ashes under the power of the sun, then no matter if it was the ruler of the East District or the star spirit of the sun, I would lose all my face, right? How about you have a little self-control? Little brother? 16 Nights reversal also interrupted. Moreover, it's fine to make the sun set, but why didn't you ask me to do such a fun thing? Juyu and Haroi Buyao said at the same time. That's right. That's right. You guys. It was unknown when Black Rabbit had a paper fan in his hand, but with 3 crisp sounds, he slapped 16 Nights reversal, Juyu, and Haroi Buyao on the heads of the 3 problem children. You idiot adults, that's enough. This is not something that can be described as fun, Letitia said with dissatisfaction. Letitia also said with some dissatisfaction. She looked at Noah with eyes full of blame. My master, you are the same. Please consider what kind of disaster overusing your power will bring to the surroundings, okay? Okay. I will be careful next time. Noah shook his head with a wry smile, then pulled himself together and looked at White Yiksha. By the way, White Yiksha, I have something to ask you. What? White Yiksha looked at Noah in annoyance. Are you trying to find trouble for me again? I just have some questions I want to ask you. Don't be so vigilant. Noah sighed, then became serious and looked straight at White Yiksha. Do you know who in the box court can use the gift of invulnerability? The gift of invulnerability? White Yiksha was slightly startled and asked in confusion. Why do you ask? Well, I just have something I want to study. Noah brushed him off. Help me think. See if there's anyone who can use the gift of invulnerability. The gift of invulnerability? White Yiksha looked at Noah suspiciously at first. When he saw that Noah's expression was very serious, he sighed slightly and began to think. If you are referring to the gift of invulnerability, I do know some people who can use it. There are even quite a few small fries. It's not the kind of gift that ordinary weapons can't cut. Noah corrected him. It's the gift of invulnerability that can even completely block a Godhead gift armament. An invulnerable blessing that can even completely block a Godhead grade blessing? White Yiksha's brows furrowed tightly. If that's the case, the first person I can think of is the predecessor of No Name, a member of this community when it was still at its peak. A former member of this community? Noah was stunned. At this time, Letitia couldn't help but speak. White Yiksha, are you talking about Ritian Lion? Ritian Lion? Noah looked at Letitia. Letitia, is the Ritian Lion you speak of the person who has the gift of invulnerability? To be precise, Ritian Lion isn't a person, but a divine beast that drives the sun god war chariot. Letitia explained. Furthermore, Ritian Lion doesn't have the gift of invulnerability. That invulnerability power is only the power obtained after the Leo constellation Sun Sovereign was strengthened. Leo constellation Sun Sovereign? Noah was finally shocked. In other words, this community used to have a member who had the Sun Sovereign? Yes, Master Noah. Letitia nodded, then bit her lip. However, in the attack of the Demon King 3 years ago, the Ritian Lion who had the Leo constellation Sun Sovereign should have been captured by the enemy Demon King like me. The Leo constellation Sun Sovereign should have fallen into the hands of the enemy, right? If it's the Ritian Lion who has the Leo constellation Sun Sovereign and has been strengthened by the Sun Sovereign, then even a Godhead gift armament can be repelled, right? White Yiksha said with a sigh. That kind of Sun Sovereign falling into the hands of a Demon King is really a situation that doesn't make people happy. Is that so? Noah immediately fell into deep thought. Sun Sovereign? Looking at Noah who was completely lost in thought, White Yiksha narrowed his eyes slightly. Immediately, he also fell into deep thought. Chapter 1343. In the end, although he had a discussion with White Yiksha about the gift of invulnerability and the sovereignty of the sun, Noah did not tell White Yiksha about the black-robed man. Wasn't that to be expected? Although the other party had directly targeted Noah, his true face and purpose were completely unknown. If it was just an attack on Noah, it wouldn't be a crime in this box where there were existences that surpassed human intelligence everywhere, right? Just because someone was picking on him, Noah could not bring himself to complain to the person who dominated his social class. This was equivalent to looking for the teacher when he was bullied by his classmates. Therefore, in the end, this matter was left unsettled. Regarding this, although White Yiksha couldn't let it go, he couldn't continue to question him and could only leave helplessly. As for No Name's companions, they questioned Noah about this matter, but Noah, who didn't have any clues, still perfunctorily brushed them off, causing them to scatter with dissatisfaction. After dealing with those troublesome problem children, Noah returned to his room. After placing Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, on the bed, Noah directly laid down and closed his eyes as various thoughts flashed through his mind. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Immediately after, a voice that was light and tender but also faintly carried a sense of maturity rang out. "Master Noah, are you asleep?" "Letitia?" Noah came back to his senses, but he didn't get up or turn around. He maintained the appearance of closing his eyes and pretending to be asleep as he spoke leisurely. "Come in." As soon as he finished speaking, the door to Noah's room was directly opened. Letitia, who was wearing a cute and petite maid uniform, walked in from outside the door. As Noah's personal maid, Letitia usually entered Noah's room. However, in the past, Letitia had always used the excuse of serving Noah to enter Noah's room. But today, Letitia was obviously not here to serve Noah. That young but rather cute face was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Noah seemed to have noticed that Letitia's atmosphere was a little different from before. He opened his eyes and looked at Letitia. "What happened?" Letitia met Noah's gaze. After hesitating for a while, she said so. "Is Master still thinking about the sovereignty of the Leo constellation sun? To be precise, you should be thinking about the gift of invulnerability, right?" Noah corrected. "After all, it's not only the Leo constellation sun's sovereignty that can strengthen one's body to become invulnerable, right?" "That is indeed the case. In the box court, there are many blessings that can grant immunity to weapons, and it is not limited to the Leo constellation sun's sovereignty," Letitia said seriously. However, to be able to repel the thousands of Godhead-grade bestowment weapons that Master possesses, the first thing that people would think of is the Leo constellation's sun's sovereignty. So, that's why White Yiksha was the first to mention it, Noah said with a sigh. "I did not think that in the past, this community actually had a member who held the sun's sovereignty. Regardless of which world it was, the existence of the sun was necessary. Even in this box court, among the top Asura gods and Buddhas, there were many divine spirits and star spirits that had deep connections with the sun. There were even many pure-blooded dragon species and the 3 strongest races. Under such circumstances, the sun's sovereignty that represented the most Asura gods and Buddhas with the most important position would be divided into 24 portions. And Noah had heard that even as the astral spirit of the sun, the demon king who once represented the Seism to dominate all the universes and became the center of all cosmology, White Yiksha only held sovereignty over 14 of the suns. As for the other 10 sun sovereigns, 6 of them were held by someone who similarly had the deepest connection to the sun. She was a 3-digit number, but was an exceptional existence, able to stand on equal footing with the White Yiksha, someone who was respectfully called a queen by others. In other words, there were only 4 suns' sovereignty left for the world to fight over. In this world where gods and Buddhas walked everywhere and divine beasts were as numerous as dogs, to be able to stand out and hold one of the remaining 4 suns' sovereignty, one could imagine how difficult it was to think about it. No name actually had such an existence in its heyday. Should it be said that it was truly worthy of being the largest community in the East District in the past? However, Letitia was silent for a while. After a while, she suddenly spoke. "Master, you're wrong." Noah was instantly stunned. Under Noah's stunned expression, Letitia spoke faintly. "In this community, there was more than one member who held the sun's sovereignty. As the former leader of the Box Court Knights, I also held the sun's sovereignty." "WH. What?" Noah stood up abruptly and looked at Letitia in surprise. "You also have the sun's sovereignty?" "Yes." Letitia looked at Noah. "Master should have more or less heard about me, right?" Noah nodded. Letitia de Cray. This was Letitia's full name. As mentioned before, Letitia was a purebred vampire. Not only did she have godhood, but she also once wreaked havoc in the Box Court as the Demon King before finally becoming a member of this community. Before Letitia became the Demon King, she had a reputation that was even wider than the Demon King. In the Box Court, vampires were called the Box Court Knights. In order to protect the only Box Court city that could move under the sun, they had always played the role of the guardians of order. At that time, the hierarchy system had not yet appeared. Therefore, the people who maintained the order and security of the Box Court were the vampires called the Box Court Knights. Letitia was the rightful heir to the throne of this race. At that time, it was me who led the Hakata Knights to protect this Hakata city. Later on, we established a hierarchy system to protect the lower class. Letitia narrated with a tranquil expression. Therefore, very few people know that in fact, when there is only one person left to protect the lower levels of order, that person will be given a temporary 4-digit position and one of the Sun Sovereigns, becoming the full hierarchy ruler. One of the Sun Sovereigns and a temporary 4-digit position. Noah said with some uncertainty. In other words, Letitia, as the leader of the Box Court Knights who established the hierarchy ruler system, the first hierarchy ruler in history is you? Similarly, under such circumstances, I also became the first full hierarchy ruler in history. In order to recognize this achievement, the 25th Sun Sovereign, Ophiuchus, is my possession. The expression on Letitia's face became a little sad. However, there was internal strife among the vampires. The cause was because of the Sun Sovereign of Ophiuchus. Within the vampires, there was a portion of them who wanted to control the Sun Sovereign that had been tormenting them for a long time. When Letitia went to defeat the Demon King, they launched an internal strife. In that internal strife, Letitia's family, friends, and subordinates all died. In order to seek revenge, in that internal strife, I fell to become the Demon King and put an end to the war. Letitia laughed self-deprecatingly. Now that I think about it, as the former guardian of order, the protector of the Box Court, for the sake of revenge, he actually degenerated into an existence that he had always destroyed and defeated in the past. There really is nothing more ironic than this. And then? Noah was silent for a while, then asked softly. Then, the predecessor of this community defeated you, who had become the Demon King, and made you a subordinate, right? Actually, it's not right to say that I was defeated. The game I held was just sealed. Letitia shook her head. The former members of this community achieved the condition of indefinitely suspending my game and cut me off from the game itself, sealing the Demon King game. Since then, I have joined this community. Is that so? Noah sighed and couldn't help but reach out his hand and gently touch Letitia's head. It's been hard on you. This sentence made Letitia's heart inexplicably sour, but at the same time, a warm current flowed through her. Chapter 1344. Just like that, as if nothing had happened, the entire No Name began to develop at a steady pace. Under such circumstances, the day of the Southern District's Harvest Festival was not far away. And on this day, in order to discuss the Southern District's Harvest Festival, everyone gathered in the base's Great Hall. In the Great Hall that was as vast as a conference room, a long table was placed in the center. On the long table, from the seat of honor, sat Ren, Noah, 16 Knights, Jo Yuasuka, Haruhide Masaaki, Black Rabbit, Letitia, and Lily, who was chosen as the representative of the children. This order was actually very particular. In No Name, normally, when deciding on the community's activities in the Great Hall, they would need to sit according to the individual's position in the community. Of course, as the leader, Ren naturally had to sit at the head of the table. This fact made Ren Jing sit there with a stiff and nervous expression. What's wrong? Young Master Tiny taught. 16 Knights Reversal teased. Are you nervous? Of course I'm nervous. Ren couldn't hide his emotions as he spoke in a low voice. After all, for someone like me to sit at the head of the table, it really shouldn't be. What are you talking about? Young Master Ren. Black Rabbit quickly spoke. You are the leader of the community, isn't it natural for you to sit at the head of the table? Black Rabbit is right. Letitia also spoke as if it was natural. Ren, this is the treatment you deserve, just stick out your chest and accept it. But. Ren's voice became even lower. Undoubtedly, everyone's contribution and role to this community is greater than mine, excluding the position in the community. The position of the rest of the members, generally, was determined according to their ability, role, contribution, and other factors. The reason why Noah could sit below Ren was because he not only defeated the demon Star Spirit, but also defeated the Demon King. He also made a lot of contributions to the revival of the base's farmland, and could be considered as the #1 contributor in the community. On the other hand, 16 Knights of Reverse Recall had always been active as an advisor to the community. He had helped Ren many times, and also had the ability to defeat the holder of a divine spark. Therefore, he was considered the existence with the greatest contribution other than Noah. As for the two girls, Jiu Yuasuka and Hiroi Biao, they had also contributed greatly to the development of the community. There was only Black Rabbit. Originally, this veteran who had supported No Name for 3 whole years should have contributed greatly, but because he couldn't participate in the game of blessings as he wished, he had lost a lot of his opportunities to be active and could only be ranked below Hiroi. As for Letitia, because she was Noah's subordinate, her status was lower than the other members who sat on the same level as Noah. She could only sit behind Black Rabbit. As for Lily, because she did not have the ability to contribute greatly to the community, she could only fall to the bottom. Ren's contribution to the community was similarly not that great. In the end, he sat at the head of the table because of the leader's position. No wonder he was so agitated. Alright, the scale of our community is still not very big, so it's not the time to start thinking about status. Noah patted Ren's shoulder. So, this matter, we will discuss it later. Let's talk about the important matters first. That's true. Ren took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he looked at Lily. Well then, Lily, can I trouble you to report the situation of the revival of the farming area? Yes. Lily's expression brightened. Thanks to Mel and Dion developing the land every day, and with the support of Lord Noah's tools, 1/4 of the soil in the farming area is already usable. Because of the lack of manpower that Lord Noah mentioned, if the fields are not taken care of properly, it may lead to a wasteland, so we have been slowing down recently. It is estimated that we will stop in the near future. We will continue when the number of members increases. The pointy hat goblin with the spirit of pioneering and achievements, Mel. The permanently moving iron doll made with divine precious iron, Dion. With the help of the goblins who could be of great help in the recovery of the land, as well as the marionettes who could work without rest or fatigue, and with the tools provided by Noah, the recovery of the land in No Name base was quite fast. The reason why Jiao Fei was able to sit below Noah and 16 Knights in Reverse was because of the help she provided, namely Dion and Mel, who had contributed greatly to the revival of the farming area. Is that so? Both Mir and Dean are working hard? Jiao Fei now said with relief and happiness. When we go back, we should give them some rewards. The farming area has been revived so well. Haruhabu Yari muttered to himself. He seemed to have thought of something and looked at Ren. Then, what we lack now is suitable seedlings for planting in the farming area and animals for grazing, right? That's right. Coincidentally, the Southern District's Harvest Festival is almost here. During the Harvest Festival, there will definitely be a reward game with a large number of crops and animals as prizes. This is a good opportunity. Ren was getting more and more engrossed. So, regarding the Harvest Festival, there is a problem that needs to be decided first. Hearing this, everyone understood. The main point was here. As expected, Ren raised such a problem. This time, the Southern District's Harvest Festival is scheduled to be held for about 20 days. Including the Eve Festival, that would be 25 days, which is almost a month's time. A game of this scale is not common. If possible, I believe that we should participate in the whole process. However, it is not good for the main force of the community to leave the base for such a long time. So, we need to decide who will stay behind. As soon as he finished speaking, 16 knights in reverse, Jiao Fei, and Haruhabu Yari all spoke at the same time. I refuse. Ren suddenly choked and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Black Rabbit and Lily also had a stiff expression. For a moment, they did not know what to do. Only Letitia, who raised her eyebrows, said, "Everyone, our community is currently beginning to accumulate strength. So, in terms of defense, we need to strengthen and strengthen. It is not impossible for the low-level Tiger Man to come to the base and kidnap children. Not to mention, we have defeated the Demon King, and our reputation is gradually spreading. It will definitely attract many people's attention. Can't we reconsider? It's not that we don't understand." 16 knights in reverse crossed his arms in front of him. "But, the people who stay behind are not all of them, right?" "That's right." Jiao Fei now agreed. "Since it's not all of them, it means that there is a choice, right? Compared to staying behind, the Harvest Festival is obviously more interesting." Haruhabu Yari said directly. "So, I don't want to stay." This time, Letitia did not know what to say. Seeing the situation suddenly become a complete deadlock because of the three problem children's way of doing things, Noah bitterly smiled and raised his hand. "If that's the case, then let me stay behind." Ren, Black Rabbit, and Lily's eyes lit up. As expected of the little bro, you gave up such a fun harvest festival and chose to stay behind to silently contribute to the community. 16 knights in reverse was so happy that he clapped his hands. "To be honest, you are definitely the first person I admire. Please accept 16 knights' sincere gratitude." Jiao Fei Niao and Haruhabu Yari also nodded. "As expected of Noah, you're so sensible. You guys have already given me enough." Noah's mouth twitched. "You guys just want to have fun, and me staying behind means that you guys can have fun. That's why you guys are so happy. You don't have to flatter me. Well, after all, we are not like little bro. Even if we choose to stay behind, there are still blonde and silver-haired lowly maids to play with." 16 knights in reverse said with a smile. "Also, the spotted lowly you ordered should be arriving soon, right?" After 16 knights in reverse said this, Black Rabbit seemed to have remembered something important and hurriedly said to Noah. "Right. Right, Noah-san, Lord White Yiksha did send a message saying that the reward from last time has been prepared, and that you can go and get it at any time." Hearing this, Noah's eyes lit up and he smiled. Chapter 1345. The Outer Gate of Boxing, 2105380, Thousand Eyes, S Branch. After Noah came out of No Name with Letitia, he went straight here. It was not that Noah was in a hurry. It was just that the other members of No Name were already preparing to head to the South District. There was only a group of weak children left in the entire base. Therefore, as the only member left in the base, Noah could not leave when the other members were not around. Otherwise, there would not be much meaning in staying behind. Thinking of this, Noah wanted to bring the spotted lowly home as soon as possible. With Letitia and Pest's help, he would not be bored even if he stayed behind, right? In addition, there was also Aster. Noah wanted to let the three Lolas take care of the group of naughty children in the base. Under such circumstances, Noah pushed open the door of the branch and walked in. Under the greeting of the staff, he directly rushed to where White Yiksha was. "You're finally here?" In the room that looked like a dorm, White Yiksha held a fan in one hand and welcomed Noah with a smile on his face. Looking at the enthusiastic White Yiksha, Noah and Letitia looked at each other. "Is it just my imagination?" Letitia asked with uncertainty. "White Yiksha, you seem to be in a good mood." "Well, I really enjoyed it." In that instant, Bayasha revealed an expression of reminiscence like a pig, but in the next second, he immediately restrained himself. He coughed dryly and pretended to be serious as he spoke. "That's just a small matter. What's important is your matter. After saying that, White Yiksha raised his hand to the staff at the side. The staff immediately understood and went forward. In the hands of the staff was a small box with an open lid. In the small box, there was a ring. A ring with the picture of a clown playing the flute. If someone was familiar with the details, they would definitely recognize the picture in an instant. That was the flag of the community known as Grim Grimoire Hamon. That was the flag of the community led by the 5-digit Demon King Pest, known as the Black Death Spot Demon King, or Black Death Spot Reaper. Taking a closer look, this ring with the engraved Grim Grimoire Hamon flag was different from ordinary rings. Not only was it transparent like crystal, but it also flashed with a glass-like luster. It was quite beautiful. This ring is an item created by condensing more than 130 pieces of Hamel's grimoire. As a medium for Black Death Spot Demon King, there is nothing more suitable than this ring. White Yiksha looked at Noah and said with some surprise. I originally thought you were planning to let Ren use this ring, but in the end, you're the one using it yourself? Why is Ren the one to use it? Noah was slightly stunned and asked in confusion. With his ability, he shouldn't be able to fully utilize the power of Black Death Spot, right? Hearing this, White Yiksha was stunned and said in surprise. Don't you know that Ren has the gift of being able to completely control the power of the target regardless of the level of the spiritual lattice? What? Noah immediately frowned and looked at Letitia. Is this true? It turned out that Noah did not know that Ren had the gift of being an elven enslavement envoy. It was a gift that could allow the spiritual lattice races, including elves, necromancers, astral spirits, and even gods, to belong to him and control them. Different from Noah's control of the ancient flying bird, Ren's elven enslavement envoy could only be used on certain races. Moreover, if there was no affiliation, then it could only have a weak effect on existences like natural spirits. For example, controlling the fire spirit could cause sparks. For example, controlling the wind spirit could cause a breeze. For example, controlling the water spirit could produce water vapor. This level of weak effect was also the reason why Ren could not be of any use in combat at all. However, that was when he did not establish a affiliation with a certain race. Once he established a contract with a certain spiritual lattice race, his control would become extremely strong. Under normal circumstances, even if he succeeded in making a powerful individual belong to him, if the master's ability was lower than the individual's, then the individual's power would be greatly reduced. For example, Perseus Luos had greatly reduced the power of Argel, who was controlled by him. Moreover, he had to wear a restraining device on his body. Otherwise, he would not be able to control him completely. It was because of this that Noah thought that Ren could not fully control Pest with his ability. However, Ren's elven enslavement envoy could ignore the level of his spiritual lattice and allow the target's power to be fully unleashed. He could completely control them without any worry of losing control. In other words, Ren was a natural spiritual lattice user. Furthermore, Ren was the leader. Therefore, White Yiksha thought that the person who would use this ring would be Ren. However, Noah did not know this at all. Noah was not the only one who knew. I'm afraid that other than Black Rabbit, Letitia, Lily, and the other veteran members, including 16 Knights Reversal, Zhou Yu Fei Niao, and Heroi Buyao, those who just joined No Name a month ago wouldn't know about this at all, right? Please understand, my master, Letitia said with a bitter smile. This is Ren's intention. That child seems to think that the Black Death Spot Demon King is an existence that you personally defeated, so he should not monopolize Master's reward since he did not contribute anything. However, Black Rabbit and I are dissatisfied with this. The frown on Noah's face deepened. If that was the case, then it would be better for Ren to use the Black Death Spot Demon King, right? After all, to Noah, Pest's power was at a level that he could do without. However, to Ren, it was as if he had the help of God. If Ren's elven enslavement envoy were to use the Black Death Spot Demon King, then this leader with weak battle power would instantly become the main force, right? Moreover, he would not be weaker than Black Rabbit, Yuki, and Kasuga Hikari. He would be the main force second only to Noah and 16 Knights. In this way, it was no wonder that Black Rabbit and Letitia were dissatisfied with Ren giving up the Black Death Spot Demon King. Of course, Noah was also somewhat dissatisfied. Ren, aren't you treating me like an outsider? After all, he's just a child, Letitia said helplessly. If Ren were a little older, we would be able to make him understand the big picture. However, he's just an 11-year-old child. There's still time. Sooner or later, he will shine brightly. For now, let's allow him to be willful. Well, what Letitia said is not completely wrong. White Yiksha spread out his hands. Anyway, with your ability, you won't bury the power of the Black Death Spot Demon King. In that case, it doesn't matter who uses it. Noah nodded in agreement. He reached out his hand and took out the ring lying in the box. At this moment, White Yiksha said, "Since the item has been taken, you can slowly communicate with her. I won't disturb you." After saying this, White Yiksha did not even give Noah and Letitia a chance to react. He turned around and walked out of the parlor. Seeing this, Noah and Letitia were stunned at the same time. Is it my imagination? Noah asked in confusion. Why does it feel like White Yiksha is running away? Unfortunately, I have the same feeling, my master, Letitia tilted her head and said immediately. No matter what, master, you should try the new gift first. Thus, Noah suppressed the doubts in his heart and put the ring on his finger. It was also at this moment that a pitch-black wave suddenly burst out from the ring on Noah's finger. A circular formation similar to a magic square with a flag depicting a piping clown pattern spun in the pitch-black wave. Soon, within the circular formation, a gust of black wind suddenly flourished and gradually turned into a human figure. Immediately, the human figure bloomed with black and white spots of light. With a tremor, it turned into a petite figure. In the next moment, a voice filled with grief and fury rang out. White Yiksha. With the human figure as the center, a pitch-black gust of wind exploded. Chapter 1346. Boom! The pitch-black storm suddenly expanded in the entire room, instantly shattering the floor and blowing away one furniture after another. The sudden violent impact startled Noah. After he reacted, he quickly shielded Letitia, who hadn't reacted yet, behind him, blocking the attack. This was no joke. The black wind before them was a power formed by the Black Death virus itself. Furthermore, with the support of Hamel's grimoire, which had been condensed into a ring, the Black Plague Demon King, who had completely transformed into the Black Plague Demon God of Death Spots, was no longer a simple virus. Instead, it was a gift that could bestow death upon individuals, causing them to instantly die. If Letitia were to come into contact with this black wind, she would most likely die instantly. At that moment, Noah stood in front of Letitia and endured all of the incoming black wind. Ugh! The berserk black wind directly battered Noah's body, causing his clothes to flutter wildly. It even caused Noah to involuntarily raise a hand to block in front of him. It was as if he was standing in the middle of a storm, stabilizing his footing with great difficulty. Under this kind of situation, the girl that appeared from the circular formation seemed to have lost her rationality as she furiously shouted while her body swelled with terrifying black wind. White Yiksha! Come out! Come out! You actually dared to make me, the Demon King, wear so many vulgar and shameless clothes. I definitely won't let you off. Hurry up and come out. Following the girl's enraged roar, the black wind that brought death became even more berserk. Rumble, under the assault of the berserk black wind, the entire shop gradually began to tremble. Against the berserk black wind, Noah did his best to open his eyes. However, when Noah saw the scene in the center of the black wind, he was immediately stunned. He saw that in the center of the berserk black wind, Pest was looking back and forth with a face full of fury, looking for a certain person. At the same time, her fluttering skirt fluttered with her movements. At this very moment, Letitia also had the same skirt. That's right. Just like Letitia. She was known as the Black Death Spot Demon King. She had the merit of leading 80 million undead and possessed the qualifications to become a god. She had transformed into a true Grim Reaper. Almost a month ago, she had brought terror to the entire 4 million outer disciples of the Northern District. The black and white patterned dress she was wearing had long since disappeared. It was replaced by a blue and white maid uniform. That was right. It was a maid's uniform. That was why she was the same as Letitia. What did White Yiksha do to that spotted loli to make her so angry? In fact, there was no need to guess the reason. Judging from Pest's furious shout, before Noah came to take back this spotty loli, this lass must have been taken advantage of and bullied by that perverted social class leader. The only thing missing was training her, right? No wonder that White Yiksha ran away so quickly, Letitia said while hiding behind Noah, feeling somewhat vexed and uncomfortable. In short, Master, please first stop the Black Death Spot Demon King from going berserk. Otherwise, if this continues, this shop will be finished. After all, Pest's power was not destruction. Instead, she directly bestowed death upon an individual and forced them to die instantly. Thus, she did not possess much destructive power. However, even if she did not possess any destructive power, just by exploding her power to the limit, the violent wind created would be enough to blow this shop away, right? No matter what, White Yiksha had helped them so much. If they allowed this servant to go berserk, even if there was a reason for it, Noah would still lose all face, right? To Letitia, this was something that she could not tolerate. How can my master be criticized because of such a thing? Letitia shouted loudly. That's why, Master, you should first stop that idiot from going berserk. Hearing this, Noah could not help but want to smile bitterly. However, he endured it, took a deep breath, and shouted loudly. Why are you still not stopping? The ring on Noah's finger flickered with a faint radiance. The storm-like wind of death that was wreaking havoc in the surroundings suddenly stopped. Pest, who was in the center of the black storm, seemed to have been forcibly immobilized. Her entire body froze in place, unable to move in the slightest. Then, the black wind that pervaded the surroundings slowly disappeared. Of course, this was not what Pest wished for. Like Letitia, this former demon king who controlled the Black Death was now completely subordinate to Noah. She had established a subordinate relationship with Noah. This kind of relationship was not merely a verbal one. Instead, it was in the form of a contract. If such a contract was made by someone weaker than the one being controlled, then it would be fine, but if the power of the one being controlled was greater than the one being controlled, then the power of the contract would be brought to the extreme. Simply put, it was equivalent to the absolute control of the heroic spirits from the Holy Grail War in the world of the moon. Thus, under the restriction of the contract, Pest, who had become Noah's subordinate, was unable to disobey Noah's orders. Understanding this, even though Pest was still unable to move, she turned her furious gaze toward Noah. Her eyes were so furious that it seemed as if they were going to shoot out flames. Toward this, Noah heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Pest with an annoyed expression. Yo, former Lord Demon King, it's truly been a long time. If possible, I do not wish to see you at all. Pest did not conceal the malice in her words at all. When I think of how I will be humiliated like this by you all in the future, and also become your subordinate, there is truly nothing worse than this. First of all, I have to remind you that the ones who play the domineering game as the Demon King are always people like you who don't care about the safety of others. Since that's the case, then you should be mentally prepared that one day you will be suppressed by the box court and become someone else's subordinate. Noah corrected him. Secondly, I've never had the hobby of humiliating captives. Don't confuse me with White Yiksha. Bye. Night. F***CK. Extreme anger once again appeared on Pest's delicate and pretty face. Where is that abominable fellow? Tell her to come out. So what if I come out? Noah said bluntly. If he really wants to fight with you, you won't even be able to withstand his pinch. Pest immediately glared furiously at Noah. However, she knew that this was the truth. Not to mention that White Yiksha was one of the top existences in the box court. In terms of sun sovereignty alone, the White Yiksha held 14 of them. Each of them could summon a corresponding star beast. Those were existences capable of rivaling the 3 great strongest races. With Pest's strength, even if she transformed into the Black Deathspot Reaper and became a god, it would still be impossible for her to defeat even one of them. Not to mention 14 of them. Thus, even though it was very cruel, the reality was that it was simply impossible for Pest to do anything to White Yiksha. Not to mention Pest, even Noah did not dare to say that he had a way to deal with White Yiksha. Even though Pest understood this, she did not seem like the type to consider things rationally. Sure enough, you are not a good person either, Pest said in a mocking manner. I've heard that the leader of your community seems to be more suited to use me. Yet, in the end, you still ended up occupying my authority. It would appear that you are indeed a selfish person. Those words caused Noah's eyes to narrow. Undoubtedly, Pest knew that Noah did not know about Benevolence's grace at all. Nor did he know about the details of this matter. In the end, Pest still said those words. Clearly, she only wanted to make things difficult for Noah. This caused Letitia to feel somewhat furious. She wanted to step forward but was stopped by Noah. Under Pest's attentive gaze, Noah slowly stepped forward and arrived before Pest. He extended a hand and, to Pest's stunned expression, bent down and lifted her delicate chin, raising her face slightly to face him. There's nothing I can do about it. After all, I said that I would properly make you my toy, Noah said with a smile that was not a smile. Are you prepared to accept it? Because of that, a strong sense of foreboding emerged in Pest's heart. Chapter 1347. The next day, in front of No Name's headquarters, Ren, 16 Knights, Joyu and Asuka, Haruhabu Yai-Chi, and Black Rabbit were all present. They were preparing to head to the Southern District to participate in the Harvest Festival. In addition to the main force members who were preparing to head to the Southern District for the Harvest Festival, the children in the community were all present, led by Lily. It was very clear that they were planning to send off the main force members heading to the Southern District to participate in the Harvest Festival. Ren cast his gaze toward Noah, who was standing at the very front of the group of children. He spoke with a somewhat apologetic yet serious tone. In that case, Noah-san, I'll leave the headquarters to you for the time being. Please, 16 Knights of Reverse said casually without any sincerity. We will return with trophies that will satisfy you. If we're in a good mood, we might even bring you a gift, Joyu and Asuka said with a mischievous smile. That's why, you have to work hard. Same here, Haruhabu Yai-Chi nodded with the most serious expression as he hugged Sanmao. I'll remember to bring you the specialties of the Southern District. Everyone, we are preparing to participate in the Harvest Festival's bestowment game, not to go sightseeing. Black Rabbit's long rabbit ears drooped down as he spoke in an extremely helpless manner. Why can't everyone be a bit more nervous? Well, isn't it good to have confidence? Noah curled his lips. Since you're so confident, I hope that you'll truly be able to show me the trophies you'll bring back that will leave me speechless. Please look forward to it, little brother. The corners of 16 Knights Reversal's mouth curled up slightly as he looked behind Noah with a meaningful gaze. Besides, even if you're going to stay behind, I believe that little bro will definitely not be bored, right? Hearing 16 Knights' words, Joyu and Asuka, Haruhabu Yai-Chi, Black Rabbit and Ren's expressions immediately became strange. They all cast their gazes behind Noah. There, Pest appeared to be dispirited and extremely tired. She stood there as if she was feeling extremely humiliated and had given up on herself. Upon closer inspection, Pest was not wearing her iconic floral pattern dress, nor was she wearing the black and white maid uniform she wore yesterday. Instead, she was wearing a set of apparel that made one unable to look at her directly. It was a tight-fitting outfit made of soft fur. Although it was called a bodysuit, in fact, the style of the bodysuit was no different from a swimsuit. Not only did it expose the shoulders, abdomen, and thighs, but it also almost exposed the entire white back. As for the color, it was the color of brown. Furthermore, it had a pair of dog ears on its head. Its hands and feet were also equipped with dog gloves and gauntlets. There was also a furry tail hanging from its back. That figure was simply a typical example of a doting mother dog. What's more, there was a leather collar around the neck of such a lovable dog. There was a rope tied to the collar, and Letitia was holding it firmly in her hand. This scene made 16 Knight's eyes light up. He patted Noah's shoulder happily. Not bad. Little brother, you've also finally awakened? Don't speak as if I have some sort of terrible potential, all right? Noah swatted away 16 Knight's enthusiastic hand and said with a fake smile. It's just that my maid doesn't seem to be very obedient. Thus, I must properly educate her and have White Yiksha provide me with some assistance. Noah's words caused Pest, who was dressed like a dog, to shiver all over. As if she had recalled some sort of nightmare, she muttered with a face full of humiliation and fear. Demon. Demon. All of you are demons, even the heavens would pity her. Until yesterday, Pest was still incomparably domineering and filled with killing intent. She had the appearance of wanting to chop Noah and White Yiksha into pieces. Yet, today, she had become like this. One could very well imagine what sort of devastation Noah and White Yiksha had inflicted on Pest in the short span of a day. Looking at Letitia's joyful appearance as she held onto the leash, it was clear that this vampire maid had also hit Pest while he was down. She was having a lot of fun. Although the pitiful Pest appeared to be extremely cruel and calm, and was still a former demon king, in reality, before she became an undead, this girl was merely a 12-year-old child. Noah, White Yiksha, and Letitia did not have the slightest bit of guilt when they ravaged the flowers of their motherland. Ren could not bear to look straight at them. As for Jiao Fei Niao and Heroi Buyao, they looked at each other. As if they had made some sort of decision, they nodded heavily. I didn't expect that a dog's outfit could be so cute. The South District's Harvest Festival seems to be going on for nearly a month. I wonder if I can buy a rabbit girl outfit during the festival? At this moment, a chill ran down Black Rabbit's spine, causing this rabbit to almost jump up and speak with a panicked expression. 2. Who do you two plan to buy the rabbit girl outfit for? Jiao Fei Niao and Heroi Buyao looked at Black Rabbit at the same time. They did not say anything and only gave Black Rabbit an incomparably brilliant smile. This smile caused Black Rabbit to finally be unable to hold back and cry out noisily. You. What do you plan to do? This group of idiot adults. Good. 16 Knights clapped his hands and looked at Jiao Fei Niao and Heroi Buyao with a serious expression. Let me participate as well. Welcome, welcome. Jiao Fei Niao and Heroi Buyao nodded enthusiastically. Stop right there. You big idiot adults. Black Rabbit could not bear it anymore and took out a paper fan used to ridicule, randomly fanning the 3 problem children. The 3 problem children dodged Black Rabbit's paper fan attack while laughing loudly. It was as if they were deliberately teasing Black Rabbit as they ran into the distance. Black Rabbit was so angry that he trembled and shouted as he chased after them. Wait. Wait for me. Ren was dumbstruck as he looked at his 4 companions who were running further and further away. When he finally reacted, he ran forward in a panic. He still remembered that during the last fire dragon birth ceremony, Ren was abandoned by the crowd halfway through the ceremony. This time, Ren did not want to be left behind again. At that moment, Ren hurriedly chased after him while turning his head and shouting at Noah. Then, Mr. Noah, we'll be leaving now. After saying that, the group of people ran away without leaving a trace. Seeing this, Noah smiled helplessly. This group of people, we haven't even arrived at the location of the ceremony and they're already causing such a ruckus. I really don't know what will happen during the ceremony. Isn't it good? Letitia held the dog leash and said with a gentle expression. No matter if it's Ren or Black Rabbit, in order to support this community, they've suffered a lot. It's quite rare to be able to laugh and talk like this. Don't say it like you don't have a part in it. Noah knocked on Letitia's head. Why do you say it like an old person? Oh, this is truly rude of me. Master. Letitia held her head that was knocked on and said in a slightly awkward manner. Although I have this appearance now, I was once a pure-blooded vampire that wreaked havoc in the Box Court as the Demon King. Furthermore, I was also a founding member of this community. No matter what, I should still be able to express my feelings toward the lives of the younger generation, right? I was once a Demon King too. Pest was unable to refrain herself from interrupting. Why have I never seen you all respect me before? You said it yourself. That was in the past. Letitia pulled on the leash in her hand and said. Now, before you became a Demon King, you were still Master's servant. Before you have a sufficient understanding of your current identity, as your senior, I have many things that I need to properly teach you. After saying those words, a joyous smile appeared on Letitia's young and delicate face. This caused Pest's face to turn green. Seeing Pest's appearance as if she was facing a great enemy, Noah was unable to refrain himself from having the urge to bully this little girl. Thus, just like yesterday, Noah bent down and lifted Pest's chin to face him. He revealed a mischievous expression. Rest assured, I will treat you well, my adorable toy. Pest immediately started shivering. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. After a long while, the sorrowful cry of the spotted lowly resounded through the sky above the base. I never want to wear those shameful and vulgar clothes again. Chapter 1348. In the dark night, the gentle moonlight slowly sprinkled down from the sky like a layer of hazy gauze, enveloping the entire earth. The night sky of the Box Court was indeed very beautiful. The stars were like decorations in the dark night sky. While they flickered, they became a small part of the stars, forming a beautiful scene that seemed to be pierced through by various galaxies. Such a scene could only appear in the Box Court. Because only in this box where even the ownership of the stars, the so-called sovereignty, was occupied by various Asuras, gods, and Buddhas, would these stars naturally shine brightly in the sky. Of course, if the Asura gods and Buddhas who held the sovereignty of these stars did not wish for the stars to be seen by the entire Box Court, then they could make them descend from the sky at any time. Although it sounded very inconceivable, the so-called sovereignty was such a thing. Not only could the holder summon the corresponding star spirits and star beasts of those stars, even gods and giant dragons, but they could also control their trajectories and make the stars move according to their will. Of course, these stars that decorated the bustling starry sky were only secondary. If the sovereignty of the sun was completely held by one person, then that person could also change the trajectory of the sun according to their will. Unfortunately, even the star spirit of the sun, White Yiksha, who was once a two-digit demon king, only held the sovereignty of 14 suns, let alone other people. If one wanted to hold the sovereignty of all 24 suns, including the Ophiuchus constellation that was awarded to Letitia as a reward for the merits of the Box Court Knight, there was a total of 25 suns. The difficulty was almost equal to impossible. Under such circumstances, at the edge of a cliff that was covered by moonlight, a youth looked up at the stars in the sky and muttered. I wonder, including the sun, how would it feel to hold the sovereignty of all the stars in one's hands? The young man who said such wishful thinking was probably only 11 or 12 years old, right? The young man was wearing what seemed to be a long robe of the same color on top of a pure white training suit. The color of the youth's hair was a deeper white than the pure white clothes. In addition, the youth also had a pair of golden eyes that emitted light. That attitude actually made the young man look more mature. However, compared to that mature feeling, the youth's words made people think of words like, children's words carry no harm. Why don't we take the sovereignty of all the stars, including the sun, as our goal? In the next second, this sentence was immediately greeted by a clear voice filled with helplessness. Your Highness, it's good that you have such ambition, but even I have to say that it's simply impossible to achieve it, isn't it? As soon as he finished speaking, a petite figure suddenly appeared behind the young man who was addressed as His Highness. It was a young girl with waist-length black hair. The young girl's age was about the same as the young man who was addressed as His Highness. She wore a sleeveless black dress with a jacket tied around her waist. Outside the jacket, there was a belt around her waist. There were several short knives hanging from the belt. Of course, compared to the weapons that were originally bestowed in various myths and legends, the quality of these short knives was terrifyingly low. They were only ordinary short knives. However, just by carrying a few ordinary short knives, the young girl gave people a feeling that she was not to be underestimated. It was believed that if anyone looked down on the young girl because of her lovable appearance and ordinary weapons, they would definitely die miserably. The young girl said helplessly as she approached the young man who was addressed as His Highness. "Your Highness, please don't forget that you only have the most important sovereignty of the sun. If you want to obtain all 25 of them, it's already difficult to make people dizzy, let alone the sovereignty of all the other stars." "Is it Ling?" His Highness did not seem to be surprised by the young girl's sudden arrival at all. He did not even turn his head as he spoke. "I know it's difficult, but it's because it's more difficult that it's easier for people to feel a sense of accomplishment when they complete it, isn't that right?" "That's not wrong, but there should be a limit, right?" The young girl named Ling pouted. "Although I know that Your Highness is very amazing, there are also many amazing people in the box court. So many Asuras, gods, and Buddhas, but none of them can achieve such a great feat even if it's Your Highness. I think it's impossible." "I know, that's why I'm just saying it casually. Obtaining the sovereignty of the sun is already troublesome enough for me, but now there's only one. If I want to obtain the sovereignty of all the stars in the sky, then no matter what, I won't do such an impossible thing." His Highness shook his head with a smile. "It's just that, since I don't have anything in particular that I want to do, I might as well make this a goal. That's why I said that." "Don't have anything in particular that you want to do?" Ling was silent for a moment before suddenly speaking. "But, Your Highness, right now, we have something that we must do." "I know," His Highness said with a calm expression. "Is everything ready?" "Basically, everything is ready," Ling said. "Then, Your Highness, is it time to carry out the attack plan in the Southern District?" "The Southern District?" His Highness narrowed his eyes and abruptly asked this question. "This time, we should be preparing to attack the Eastern, Southern, and Northern Districts at the same time, right?" "Why don't you just let me attack the Eastern District?" "No, Your Highness," Ling reminded. "You are a very important leader for us, and there is a very terrifying existence in the Eastern District. If you go against her, even Your Highness can't say that you won't be in danger, right?" "That's right, the Demon King of White Night is indeed a very terrifying existence, even I can't compete with her," His Highness calmly accepted. "But, it's because I know it's very difficult that I want to challenge it." "Your Highness, please don't be silly." Ling puffed up her cheeks. Undoubtedly, she just escaped from the Eastern District last time. Hearing this, His Highness slightly narrowed his eyes. "I heard that No Name also went to the Southern District's Harvest Festival, right?" "Yes, and he has already set off." Ling seemed to have seen through what His Highness really wanted to ask and directly answered. "As for that little brother, he seems to have chosen to stay in the base and didn't go to the Southern District." "Stay in the base?" His Highness immediately touched his chin. "In other words, he is also in the Eastern District, right?" "That's right." Ling sighed. "The White Night King is already dangerous enough, and now that little brother is also in the Eastern District, the Eastern District is undoubtedly the most dangerous area. Fortunately, those monsters are assisting the attack." Speaking of this, Ling's pretty face, which had always appeared very innocent, actually showed a trace of fear. With the attack of those monsters, even if the White Night King can protect himself, he can't protect the entire Eastern District, right? His Highness' expression suddenly became a little solemn, and he muttered. "Then, what about that person? That little brother?" Ling asked with some confusion. "Your Highness, why do you look like you care about that little brother?" "I don't understand myself." His Highness closed his eyes. It's just that I feel that that person has something that I don't have. Something that your Highness doesn't have? Ling asked curiously. What is it? His Highness didn't speak, but asked this question. Since we can't go to the Eastern District, can we lure that person out of the Eastern District? Lure out the Eastern District? Ling suddenly frowned, and then she thought of something and smiled sweetly. No, there's no need to lure that little brother out, he will come out on his own. Come out on his own? His Highness was stunned. Your Highness, Ling said. Let's not go to the Southern District, let's go to the Northern District. Chapter 1349. Early in the morning, Noah was leisurely drinking tea in the meeting room of No Name's headquarters. Pest, who was wearing a blue and white maid uniform, had an emotionless expression on her face as she mechanically placed the black tea on the tray in her hand before Noah. Master, please have some tea. After 2 days of flirting, teaching, Pest finally submitted to Noah in a sullen manner. She obediently addressed Noah as her master and was entrusted by Letitia to serve Noah. If one were to say that she was unwilling, then that was not the case at all. Although she still held on to her pride as a former demon king, Pest was not someone who was unable to accept the fact that she had to serve someone else. After all, before she was infected by the Black Death and died from the corrosion of the Black Death, Pest was merely an ordinary child. No, it would be more accurate to say that the term ordinary child was not quite right for Pest to be used on her. That was because Pest did not lead a very good life when she was alive. Because of that, Pest did not have any objections toward the matter of work. Otherwise, Pest would likely have to stubbornly resist for another 1 or 2 days. Because of that, Pest did not feel any reluctance toward the matter of who she was supposed to serve tea for. If there was anything that she was unwilling about, it would be the fact that the person who was supposed to enjoy the tea Pest had brewed for the first time was Noah. Of course, Pest would definitely not mention this matter to anyone. Otherwise, the miserable experience from 2 days ago and yesterday would definitely befall Pest again. When she recalled the terrifying experience of being repeatedly put on all kinds of unsightly clothes like an irresistible rag doll and being groped all over by a pervert like White Yiksha, Pest's expression became incomparably stiff. Noah didn't notice this, or rather, he noticed it but didn't say anything. He nodded his head indifferently. As he looked out the window, he reached out his hand and picked up the teacup. However, he didn't drink it. He just looked outside absent-mindedly. No one knew what he was thinking. Letitia, who was standing behind Noah with Pest on his left and right, tilted her head and asked, Master, what are you thinking about? Noah didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a sip of black tea. After pondering for a while, he spat out some uncertain words. Do you guys feel that the atmosphere around you seems to be a bit off recently? Atmosphere? Letitia was a little startled. Atmosphere? Pest also furrowed her brows. The 2 girls, who had once been demon kings and had struck fear into the hearts of all the residents in the courtyard, couldn't help but look at each other. Then, Letitia confirmed it. Master, we don't quite understand what you mean, Letitia said softly. What exactly is wrong? Can you be specific? Noah's brows furrowed tightly. After hesitating for a while, he sighed and said directly. For example, do you guys feel that something big might be happening soon? Something big? Letitia and Pest were both startled. However, this was the reason why Noah had an indifferent look on his face. For some unknown reason, after Letitia, Pest, and Aster helped him get up in the morning, Noah felt a little uneasy. Yes. There was no reason for him to feel uneasy. This wasn't the first time Noah encountered such a situation. Every time something big was about to happen, Noah's sharp intuition would remind him like a sixth sense, causing Noah to feel uneasy. For example, during the battle on Celestial Wolf Island, before he encountered the black dragon recorded in Revelation, Noah also felt uneasy for no reason. Now, Noah had this feeling again. This caused Noah to be on guard. It couldn't be helped. As it turned out, Noah's intuition was indeed very sharp. This was especially true when something big was about to happen. It was like a warning, causing Noah's mind to be unable to calm down. Letitia and Pest, who didn't know about this, could only look at each other in dismay. I say, Pest couldn't help but mock Letitia. Could it be that you're being overly sensitive? Seeing Pest's impudent appearance, Letitia immediately cast a sharp gaze at her. This caused Pest's expression to stiffen again. She tightly shut her mouth. If one were to say who Pest was most afraid of, then it would undoubtedly be Letitia. That was because only by establishing a subordinate contract with Pest would Noah, as Pest's master, be able to make Pest unable to resist. Noah would be able to toy with her like a toy. Every time Noah wanted to properly dampen Pest's spirit, it would always be Letitia who carried out his orders. Thus, in the past 2 days, Pest had been tormented by Letitia quite a bit. She was even afraid of being tormented by Letitia. In terms of strength, Pest was, without a doubt, in the lead. Furthermore, she was more than a step ahead. After being modified and condensed by Thousand Eyes, Hamel's magic book that took the form of a ring did not change its effect on Pest. However, its form had changed. Before this, if Pest wanted to transform into the Black Death Spot Reaper and become a god, she would have to activate the power of Hamel's magic book. However, after being modified and condensed by Thousand Eyes, Hamel's magic book was no longer activated by Pest. Instead, it would be worn by Noah, Pest's master. In other words, when Noah wore the ring, Hamel's magic book would activate and allow Pest to transform into a god. On the other hand, once Noah removed the ring, not only would Pest be unable to maintain her physical body, she would also return to the ring. The effect of Hamel's magic book would also disappear. Pest would return to her original form and become a pure, undead spirit. Thus, unless Noah abandoned the subordinate contract between him and Pest, Pest would have to become even stronger than Noah in order to resist Noah. Otherwise, she would not be able to resist Noah no matter what. However, in a situation where she did not resist Noah, Pest would be able to maintain her god form at all times and unleash the might of a 5-digit peak demon king. Letitia was once a ruler with full authority. She was granted sovereignty over the sun of Ophiuchus constellation and a 4-digit status. Without a doubt, she was stronger than Pest. Unfortunately, Letitia had already lost her divinity and her strength was less than 10%. Even her gift was incomplete. Right now, her strength was probably only at the 5-digit level. She was definitely not a match for Pest. However, in terms of status, Letitia was undoubtedly higher than Pest. There was no other reason. Letitia was simply more favored than Pest. She was favored by her master, Noah. If she resisted Letitia, Noah would definitely make an appearance for Letitia. At that time, Pest would be in trouble. As expected, if she wanted to suppress this pure-blooded vampire, she would have to fight for her master's favor. Although she was unwilling to admit it, this was the truth. No, that's not the only way. Although I've formed a subordinate contract with my master, with that fellow, he doesn't have the grace of absolute control over his servants. As long as I become stronger than him, then I'll be able to resist. However, it was only later that Pest realized how naive that thought of hers was. Right at this moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. Roar. 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 An earth-shattering roar suddenly resounded through the entire sky, causing the ground to tremble slightly. The sudden strange phenomenon and sound caused both Letitia and Pest to be greatly alarmed. They cried out in alarm. What? What happened? What? What happened? Ignoring Letitia and Pest's astonishment, Noah's expression immediately sunk. As expected, Noah's premonition had come true once again. Noah stood up abruptly. Without even turning his head around, he gave the order. You two, go gather all the children in the base and send them to the underground sanctuary. Yes. Understood. Letitia and Pest replied at the same time. Then, they left. As for Noah, he looked at the sky outside the window. Then, he suddenly turned into a ray of light and flew into the distance. Chapter 1350. When Noah, who had transformed into a stream of light and shot towards the sky, arrived at the sky above the outer gate of 2105380, the scene that appeared in front of him made Noah somewhat surprised. Roar, 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 roar. Fierce roars still resounded throughout the entire sky. And the ones who roared like that were the aberrations. They had bodies like white snakes and limbs like lizards. Their heads were the kind that looked like they had been longing for food for a long time, dripping saliva, and had a ferocious appearance like a dragon or tiger. Furthermore, almost every xenomorph had two of these heads. Two-headed dragon. If he had to use a word to describe it, this was the only word Noah could think of. This two-headed xenomorph was like a swarm of ants as it swarmed over from one end of the horizon. At the same time, it let out a series of earth-shattering roars, causing the ground to tremble and the atmosphere to become chaotic. Even space itself seemed to be slightly distorted. It was extremely terrifying. Of course, if it was only their ferocious appearance, then to Noah, those two-headed dragons were no different from real ants. Not to mention a threat, they were simply decorations. However, the terrifying aura carried by the two-headed dragons told Noah that the two-headed dragons were extremely powerful. It was definitely not just their ferocious appearance. Based on initial estimates, each of those two-headed dragons had at least 5 digits worth of strength. Furthermore, Noah even sensed an aura that was not at all inferior to that of Arkle, who was under Lu's control, and Pest, who had transformed into a deity, from the group of twin-headed dragons swarming over like ants. Such a group of two-headed dragons was as dense as ants as they swarmed in the direction of the outer gate of 2105380. This scene made Noah's expression sink bit by bit. Even Noah was like this, let alone White Yiksha, who was the ruler of the East District. Damn it! Without any warning, White Yiksha's figure suddenly flashed beside Noah. Looking at the two-headed dragon swarming over from the end of the horizon, a shocked and angry expression appeared on his face. Why would all the clones of the absolute evil demon king appear here? Absolute evil? Noah's body trembled as he looked at White Yiksha in astonishment. You're saying that those two-headed dragons are split bodies of absolute evil? The fire worship sex demonic dragon, Azidakaha? Az-Dakar. It was the demonic dragon recorded in the ancient Persian Empire, which was known as the Sect of Fire. This demonic dragon was called absolute evil by the people in the Box Court. This was because it was a trial that existed to destroy the human race. Humanity's final trial. Noah softly muttered. With the title of God Slayer, an existence above the 3 strongest races of Hakada? That was right. The demon dragon, who was known as the final trial of humans, was the evil god of the fire worship sect, who was above the 3 strongest clans in the Box Court and existed only to destroy humans. They could not be defeated by existences other than humans. The gods that were killed by it would have their souls and existence completely erased. Doing evil for the sake of doing evil. Only killing for the sake of killing. Therefore, it was called absolute evil. Therefore, it was called God Slayer. In the Box Court, it was one of the oldest demon kings. It did not need to abuse its authority to fall. It was born as a demon king. It was one of the most terrifying, vile, and ferocious demon kings in the 3 digits. Because the blood that flowed out of its wounds had the property of constantly producing clones, and it had an extremely strong immortality, it was sealed 200 years ago. It was said that in the battle against this 3-headed dragon 200 years ago, many communities at the top of the Box Court paid a great price before they finally succeeded in sealing it. It was also in that battle that a large amount of blood flowed out of the 3-headed dragon's body and turned into a group of split bodies, which were 2-headed dragons. They were scattered throughout the Box Court and continued to cause great and small harm to the Box Court. And among these 2-headed dragons, the first generation of two-headed dragons that were born directly from the blood that flowed out of absolute evil, had the power of a god. In other words, the oldest demon king in the three digits was a terrifying existence that could form a group of gods by itself. Now, the blood left behind by that terrifying existence when it was sealed 200 years ago appeared in the most direct form in front of Noah's eyes. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! White Yiksha shouted angrily and anxiously. His entire body shook with a terrifying aura that made the space wail. Although I don't know why the clones of absolute evil would appear here collectively, we must not let that group of evil dragons rush into the outer gate. Otherwise, I'm afraid the Eastern District will be covered in blood. White Yiksha, who was anxious, was about to rush down when he sensed a strange feeling. He suddenly raised his head, his pupils constricted, and shouted at White Yiksha. White Yiksha! Look up! Hearing this, White Yiksha raised his head almost reflexively and looked up. Then, his pupils constricted. He saw that high up in the sky, a pitch-black rain was gently falling. That light rain was actually a contract document. A pitch-black contract document. Demon King. White Yiksha's expression turned extremely ugly. So that's how it is. Where did the Demon King control the clones of absolute evil, and lure the two-headed dragon army to attack the Eastern District? Not to mention White Yiksha, even Noah's heart sank fiercely. If that was really the case, then it would be terrible. After all, in the Eastern District, not only were there innocent and powerless citizens, there were also more than 130 children in and no name. If the Demon King and the two-headed dragon group really attacked the Eastern District, then it would really be over. At the same time, the residents of the Eastern District who had noticed the two-headed dragon swarming over from the horizon and the pitch-black contract document falling from the sky also fell into a state of panic. Their faces were filled with terror as they screamed and fled in all directions. The screams of the adults resounded through the sky. The cries of the children reverberated back and forth. For a time, the streets below fell into a state of extreme panic, causing the residents to cry and scream as they fled in all directions. Master! Letitia and Pest flew over from afar and landed beside Noah. Looking at the two-headed dragons rushing over from the horizon, the pretty faces of the two girls turned deathly pale in an instant. Az Dakaha's clones. Letitia's body trembled slightly. Why did they appear here? Are you kidding? Pest also had a look of disbelief. In the box court, can those fellows not even put on a chain and let them do whatever they want? Damn it. White Yiksha became extremely anxious. What should we do? What should we do? Even if it was a top-notch existence in the box court, in the face of absolute numbers, it would not be able to protect everyone in the Eastern District from the two-headed dragon group that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, right? This fact made White Yiksha unable to help but feel anxious. Seeing White Yiksha, who was always full of confidence, lose his self-control, no one knew that the most ancient demon king with the titles of Absolute Evil and God Slayer had left a deep impression on the star spirit of the sun. This made Noah calm down instead, and he pressed down on White Yiksha's shoulder. Now is not the time to hesitate. Quickly use the name of the ruler of the level to gather the community in the Eastern District and prepare to join forces to resist the two-headed dragon group. Also, have Thousand Eyes evacuate the people. No. It's too late. White Yiksha shook his head. Before we can gather and evacuate the people, the two-headed dragon group will attack the residential area. Do as I say. Noah said in an unquestionable tone. Immediately after, he looked at the two-headed dragon group that was surging over. Before that, I will block that group of monsters. You? White Yiksha was stunned. Master? Letitia and Pest were also stunned on the spot. Under such circumstances, Noah suddenly took a step forward. Boom! The next moment, a monstrous golden wave rose from Noah's body and turned into rolling waves that spread in all directions. Chapter 1351. Resplendent golden waves of air transformed into shockwaves visible to the naked eye, explosively expanding from Noah's body. At this moment, the source of mana within Noah's body, which was originally filled with boundless mana, suddenly changed. The energy within it all transformed into divine power, causing the mana source to transform into a source of divine power. Divine power as vast as the ocean surged back and forth within Noah's body, then rushed out of his body, forming golden waves visible to the naked eye. Wave after wave shook the surroundings, filling the entire space. Wah! Letitia and Pest were both startled. Immediately after, they were blasted away by the incoming golden waves of air. This is... White Yiksha also raised a hand, blocking in front of his body. His gaze towards Noah was filled with astonishment. Under such circumstances, Noah's pitch-black eyes suddenly flashed as he looked at the group of twin-headed dragons surging over from the other side of the horizon with his back to White Yiksha. Thou hast violated the contract, bringing evil to the world. The sacred words transformed into sound waves, slowly spreading out. The Lord says, sinners must be punished. Their backs will be shattered, their bones, tendons, hair, and brains dug out. Their blood and mud will be trampled upon. If I am one whose sharp teeth cannot approach, then I will obey the Lord's words and give the one who violated the contract a hammer of destruction. In Noah's heart, on the outline of the stone plate that represented authority, one of the 10 diagrams suddenly lit up. It was a diagram depicting a group of ferocious beasts. One of the authority of Noah's 10 incarnations, the beast horde incarnation, instantly blossomed with a bright radiance. Wang! Immediately, the golden waves of air that filled the entire horizon violently surged, condensing into various forms. The beast horde incarnation's ability was to use pure mana and divine power to create all kinds of tamed beasts. Thus, the golden waves that filled the entire horizon transformed into numerous xenomorphs. Among those xenomorphs, there were some that had the head of an ox and the body of an ox, but were standing on 2 feet. Among those aliens, some had a lizard-like body, but they were also lizard men who stood on their feet. Apart from the Taurans and lizard men, there were also various humanoid orcs that gradually took shape in the golden airwaves that filled the entire sky. Roar, 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 roar. The mutated beast men raised their heads and roared, causing the chaotic and terrifying roars to resound through the entire sky. Immediately after, golden ripples rippled out from the sides of the ferocious and terrifying beast men. It just so happened that every orc was equipped with one. Inside, a variety of luxurious treasures such as sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and so on slowly appeared and gathered in the space. Roaring at the sky, the mutated orcs reached out their hands at the same time as if they had a telepathic connection. They abruptly pulled out their treasures from the golden ripples around them. Thus, one after another, the orcs appeared in the skies, each wielding a divine artifact bestowed upon them. Roar, 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 roar. With roars that shook the air, the mutated orcs holding noble artifacts fell from the sky like raindrops, covering the sky and covering the earth. Roar, 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 roar. The 2-headed dragon pack that was surging over from the other end of the horizon finally noticed the mutated orcs that were descending from the sky. Their scarlet eyes flashed with a ruthless bloody light. Not to be outdone, they let out an earth-shattering roar and continued their charge without slowing down. Roar, 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 roar. On one side, the mutated beasts descended from the sky with many legendary weapons in their hands. Roar, 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 roar. On the other side, the 2-headed dragons surged with a ruthless bloody light flashing in their eyes. The 2 mutated camps finally met on the vast battlefield that stretched as far as the eye could see. Boom! At that moment it was as if 2 monstrous waves collided at the same time, causing a loud boom that shook the heavens and the earth. The mutated beasts, who were wielding many legendary-grade weapons, suddenly met with the 2-headed dragons, whose eyes were flashing with blood-red light. An intense conflict broke out. The 2-headed dragons were all clones that were split from the 3-headed demon dragon of the fire worship sect. It was said that each of the clones born from the blood of the oldest demon king, which numbered in the hundreds, had the power of a deity. However, not all of the two-headed dragons were the first-generation clones born from Azidakaha's blood. Like Azidakaha, his clones also had the ability to multiply. That was why there was such a terrifying number of them. Only the first generation of avatars that were born directly from Azidakaha's blood had the power of a deity. As for the second-generation clones that were split from the first-generation clones, and even the third-generation clones that were split from the second-generation clones, their power would decrease by one level according to the increase in generation. Therefore, among the densely packed twin-headed dragons, only the first generation of twin-headed dragons had deity-level power, while the rest only had around the 5-digit levels of the bottom level. Facing such a group of twin-headed dragons, the alien beastmen fearlessly charged forward with earth-shaking roars, continuously waving the weapons in their hands at the twin-headed dragons biting at them. Poochie 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 poochie. The legendary weapons easily penetrated the bodies of the two-headed dragons. Blood splashed all over the sky, and the ferocious two-headed dragons fell one after another. However, before they fell, the blood that splashed out from the pierced bodies of the two-headed dragons stopped in midair and suddenly transformed into smaller two-headed dragons that continued to roar and pounce in the direction of the mutated beastmen wielding legendary-grade weapons. That was the terrifying part of the two-headed dragons. Even if they died, the blood that splashed from their bodies would still turn into clones that would continue to fight. If the two-headed dragons were not completely annihilated and turned into ashes, it would be impossible to stop this kind of splitting. In the end, it would only lead to facing enemies that were much weaker, but whose numbers were constantly increasing. Of course, there was a limit to this kind of splitting. The split of the two-headed dragon required the splitting of its own spirit core to form a split body. In other words, every split would be accompanied by a decrease in the spirit lattice. When the spirit could no longer support the splitting, then no matter how much blood there was, it would not be able to form clones. Under such circumstances, the mutated orcs wielding legendary-grade weapons roared in excitement and madness as they bravely charged into the two-headed dragon horde, fighting with all their might. Facing the extremely valiant mutated orcs, facing the legendary weapons, the two-headed dragons could only rely on numbers to win, and began to attack in batches. Sometimes, 3 or 4 two-headed dragons would pounce on one mutated orc. Sometimes, 10 or 20 two-headed dragons would attack one mutated orc together. Relying on the absolute human wave tactic, the two-headed dragon horde gradually surrounded the mutated orcs and attacked them with all their might. Under such an attack, there would always be mutated orcs that were unable to hold on. Poochie. Accompanied by the sound of tearing, the first mutated orc that was bitten by the two-headed dragons finally appeared, half of its body torn apart by the sharp fangs. However, the mutated orc that had its body torn apart let out a berserk roar, abandoned the treasures in its hands, and madly pounced on the two-headed dragons. A magnificent white light suddenly rose from the mutated orc's body, and instantly covered the two-headed dragons. Pung! The two-headed dragons that were covered by the magnificent white light directly exploded, and turned into blood that filled the sky. The clones called Beast Horde could not only create all kinds of tamed beasts to do battle. The tamed beasts that were created, regardless of the species, would have the ability to crush everything. As such, the situation on the chaotic battlefield was reversed once again. Chapter 1352. High up in the sky, Noah's eyes were tightly closed. His entire body was surging with a vast amount of divine power, causing the golden waves to continuously reverberate throughout the entire sky. At this moment, Noah was wholeheartedly focused on controlling the beast horde, allowing the orcs to bravely kill the enemies within the densely packed group of twin-headed dragons. Without Noah's control, the tamed beasts created through the beast horde would only be able to carry out simple attacks. In that case, even if they had weapons equivalent to godhood, they would only be able to increase their killing power by a bit. It would not be of any help at all. Only with Noah's wholehearted control could the orcs with noble artifacts in their hands be able to kill without restraint. Only when facing the twin-headed dragons outside of the first generation could these orcs use the sharpness of their noble artifacts to fight 1 against 10, or even 1 against 100. In terms of numbers, the orcs were at an overwhelming disadvantage. It was not that Noah did not want to create more tamed beasts, but even if his divine power was limitless, the amount of divine power that Noah could use at once was still limited. In a situation where the amount of divine power that could be used at once was limited, the number of Noah's beast horde was also destined to be limited. After all, the characteristic of a beast horde was that the more there were, the weaker the individual strength would be. If only one tamed beast was created, then that tamed beast's strength would definitely reach the peak of 4 digits, comparable to most of the Asuras, gods, and Buddhas of the 3 strongest races. However, if the number of tamed beasts increased, then just like how the twin-headed dragons needed to split their spiritual cores to form a split body, the power of the tamed beasts that were created would also be dispersed as the number of tamed beasts increased. Currently, Noah relied on the beast horde to create over 1,000 orcs. This number, compared to the twin-headed dragons that were densely packed with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of them, was naturally at an overwhelming disadvantage. However, with such a large number of orcs, every single one of them would have top-notch power in the 5 digits. They would be able to fight against the first-generation 2-headed dragon at the level of a deity. In addition to the precious artifacts that only existed in various myths and legends, which were equivalent to the bestowed weapons of the divinity level, the orcs could even kill the first-generation 2-headed dragon by themselves. Even if they couldn't kill them, the beastman's ability to shatter everything would pull them along and vanish from the battlefield. In this way, the thousands of orcs holding noble artifacts were able to resist the densely packed double-headed dragon army and were entangled on the entire battlefield. For a moment, the light of blades and shadows of swords flashed and blood splattered everywhere. The roars of the orcs and the demonic dragons mixed together, echoing throughout the battlefield, filling the air with murderous intent. Seeing this scene, Letitia and Pest were filled with astonishment. Is this Master's true power? Letitia stared at Noah's back in disbelief. It's too frightening. Master Noah, that power is even greater than that of my past companions. This evaluation could not be said to be low. After all, among Letitia's past companions, many of them had challenged all kinds of Asuras, gods and Buddhas and obtained victory. Among them, there were even existences that held sovereignty over the sun. By relying on those companions, the predecessor of the community known as No Name became the greatest power in the Eastern District. Thus, if Letitia's evaluation were to be known by her acquaintances, they would definitely be shocked. However, those who saw this scene before their eyes would definitely not doubt that this evaluation was too high. One of the most frightening aspects of the human's final trial, Az Dakaha, was that he was able to create a group of gods with his own power. And now, Noah was doing the same thing with his own power. There was no need for bloodshed. There was no need for injuries. With his own power, Noah created a group of beasts that could rival a group of gods. With such power, how could it not be frightening? Of course, Noah did not have the ability to create a group of gods with his own power. Although the beastmen, who were comparable to gods, were terrifying, they were only composed of pure divine power. They were lifeless. They were unconscious. They were soulless. Once Noah stopped using his divine power, the group of beasts would also be cancelled. The orcs that could rival gods would also disappear. As for the 2-headed dragon that was born from Az Dakaha's blood, it could exist eternally. Thus, in this aspect, Noah was indeed inferior to the most ancient demon king. However, even so, being able to create a group of gods that could rival a group of gods in a short period of time was still very frightening. That guy, could he be a monster? Pest trembled. Have I really been an enemy of that guy? It was only at this moment that Pest finally understood. Last time, during their battle, Noah did not use his full power at all. The power that he displayed was merely the tip of the iceberg. Become even stronger than that guy? Pest realized how naive her previous thoughts were. How could such a thing be possible? While Letitia and Pest were still in shock, Noah, who had his back facing the 2 servants he had contracted with, started to feel anxious. Is it still not done? White Yiksha. If one were to observe carefully, they would definitely be able to discover it. As time passed, the two-headed dragon group's battle line was slowly approaching the city. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before the two-headed dragon group invaded the outer gate. It was not that the group of beasts was not powerful enough. It was just that the number of opponents was too great. If one wanted to completely stop the two-headed dragon group, it would not be enough to rely on just over 1,000 orcs. Unless they increased their numbers. However, once their numbers increased, the orc strength would also be scattered. They would not be able to stop the two-headed dragon group's attack. In that way, they would only be able to break through even faster. This was the advantage of numbers. It was precisely because of this advantage that someone as powerful as White Yiksha would feel extremely anxious when the two-headed dragon group attacked. If he did not have to consider the lives and deaths of the residents in the city, then with White Yiksha's strength, even if he were to face the densely packed two-headed dragon group, he would be able to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, he would be able to eliminate all the two-headed dragons without suffering any damage. However, under the situation where he needed to protect the residents in the courtyard, there was no time at all. Once he could not stop the two-headed dragon army and allowed 1 in 1,000 of them to invade the residential area, it would definitely cause a lot of casualties. That was what Noah and White Yiksha did not want to see. If he did not have to consider the advancement of the enemy army's battle line, Noah would have long used a large-scale destruction clone or a relic to annihilate the two-headed dragon group. He could not do so now because he had cancelled the group of beasts. If he used a large-scale destruction clone or a relic, then no matter how many two-headed dragons were annihilated, in the end, there would definitely be fish that escaped the net and break into the city to start a massacre. The number of enemies was simply too great. In addition, they could multiply endlessly. If he did not prepare a certain number of people to fight, he would not be able to resist at all. Seeing that the two-headed dragon group was getting closer and closer to the outer gate, Noah clenched his teeth. There's no other way. The divine power that was surging in Noah's body began to surge crazily. In Noah's heart, on the outline of the stone plate that was connected to the 10 patterns, apart from the group of beasts, another pattern began to emit light. Just as Noah was about to use his true strength and use 2 clones at the same time, a gentle voice sounded. "You've worked hard, kid. Leave the rest to me." Hearing this voice, Noah's heart calmed down. The next moment, in the city, loud and clear shouts soared into the sky. "Oh, oh, 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 oh." Troops holding high the community flag surged out of the city and charged in the direction of the two-headed dragon group. As for White Yiksha, in a flash, he appeared beside Noah. "You're finally here." Noah could not help but heave a sigh of relief. "If you came a little later, I would really have to use my trump card." "In other words, that's not your full strength, right?" White Yiksha narrowed his eyes and suddenly spoke. "That's great. Kid, hurry to the North District immediately." Chapter 1353. The North District. White Yiksha's words caused Noah, Letitia, and Pest to be stunned. Head to the North District now? What kind of joke was this? Right now, the Eastern District was at a critical juncture. It could be completely destroyed by the densely packed twin-headed dragons at any time, turning it into a dead zone. Letting Noah go to the North District at such a critical time? Are you kidding me? Noah furrowed his brows. Do you think it's possible for me to leave at this time? I know that the lives of more than 130 children from no name are in the East District. It's impossible for you not to worry. But don't worry, I've already arranged for them to take refuge. White Yiksha looked at Noah with an extremely serious expression. Right now, the North District needs you the most. Needs me the most? Noah's heart skipped a beat. Could it be, that's right. White Yiksha gritted his teeth. Just now, I received news that apart from the East District, the South and North District were also attacked by demon kings. Now, they've completely fallen into chaos. The South and North District were attacked by demon kings? Letitia was shocked and couldn't help but take a step forward. Impossible. How can there be demon kings attacking 3 regions at the same time? That's what I thought too, but that's the truth. White Yiksha's expression didn't look good either. Although I don't want to think this way, the fact that demon kings attacked 3 regions at such a coincidental time proves that multiple demon kings have already joined hands and even formed an alliance to plan an attack on 3 regions at the same time. Demon Kings Alliance. Letitia muttered in disbelief. Is that even possible? How is it not possible? White Yiksha sneered. In the box court, it's not like there aren't other demon kings forming an alliance. Since there's one, it's not strange that there's another one. Pest's eyes flickered slightly when she heard this. She lowered her head and remained silent. Bayasha, who did not notice this scene, looked straight at Noah and said, "Right now, the situation in the Northern District is very critical. The enemy clearly knows that one of the leaders in the Northern District is not only too young, but also a newcomer who recently took up the position. They are currently gathering their forces to attack the community of that leader." There was no need to explain which community this was. Who else could it be other than Shadora's Salamandra? Is that why you need me to save you? Noah was stunned. What about the Southern District? Although the situation in the Southern District isn't very good, it's at least much better than the Northern District. In addition, the members of No Name are coincidentally there and are displaying combat strength that can't be ignored. The situation is slowly improving, White Yiksha said in a pleading tone. Meanwhile, the East District is currently being attacked by the Demon Dragon's clones in the final trial of the humans. It's impossible for us to send anyone else to provide reinforcements, so I can only rely on you. Without a doubt, Noah, who could even temporarily block the densely packed 2-headed dragon horde, had the power to change the current situation in any region. Now that no region could send anyone to provide reinforcements to other regions, Noah's rescue became the most important. However, the most critical situation was still the Eastern District. Perhaps because they had considered the existence of the Sun Star Spirit, White Yiksha, the Demon King Alliance directly used the Fire Worship Sect's 3-headed demon dragon's clones to attack. The twin-headed dragon horde, which could produce more bodies once they bled, was simply too terrifying. Their numbers would remain high. Even Noah was almost forced to use his full strength. With the current strength of the Eastern District, could they resist the 2-headed dragon army? If they could not, the children in No Name would be in danger. At this time, Noah was really unwilling to leave. Have you really thought it through? Noah looked up and stared at White Yiksha. Although you're indeed very strong, there are too many enemies. If I'm here, the situation will definitely be better. But without me, even you might not be able to defend the Eastern District. Is that okay? Moreover, don't forget that other than the Fire Worship Sect's 3-headed demon dragon's clones, the enemy's demon king has yet to appear, Noah said word by word. The enemy's demon king has already used the organizer's authority to start the game. Do you have a way to deal with the demon king and the demon dragon's clones at the same time to protect the entire Eastern District? Hearing this, White Yiksha smiled. That smile caused the entire space to freeze. Who do you think I am? White Yiksha's entire body trembled with an extremely terrifying aura. Perhaps with my current strength, I won't be able to block the attacks of the 2-headed dragon horde and the demon king at the same time. In that case, I'll just bring out the absolute strongest power. This sentence caused Noah, Letitia, and Pest's hearts to tremble at the same time. As the former incarnation of the heavenly shaking theory, even though White Yiksha's spiritual lattice had shrunk as the heavenly shaking theory was gradually negated, he still possessed a powerful spiritual lattice that did not need to belong to any sect. However, White Yiksha had chosen to convert to Buddhism and obtain the Yiksha divinity. There were no benefits to such an action. For others, obtaining a divinity was equivalent to an explosive increase in strength and life level. However, as one of the 3 most powerful species, obtaining a divinity would only degrade White Yiksha's own spiritual lattice. After all, the so-called divinity was actually a gift from the gods to other species. As a star spirit, White Yiksha did not need to be bestowed by the gods. If he accepted such a gift, it would undoubtedly be admitting that he was inferior to the god who bestowed the divinity. In this way, the spiritual lattice, which was equivalent to merit and inheritance, would naturally be devalued, causing the top powers of the Hecate to be suppressed and sealed. In the end, White Yiksha willingly accepted such a devaluation. This was because, as an existence with more than 3 digits in the Hecate, he could not casually interfere with the direction of the lower class. In order to interfere with the lower class with his status as the ruler of the class and protect the residents of the lower class, White Yiksha was willing to convert to Buddhism and obtain the Yiksha divinity. He lowered his spiritual lattice and changed from the famous White Night King to White Yiksha. Now, White Yiksha had said this. She wanted to bring out an absolute supreme power above this. Then, the answer to what White Yiksha wanted to do was very obvious. You. Pest spoke in a somewhat bewildered manner. You want to return the divinity to Buddhism and retrieve the sealed power? 3 years ago, the East District was also attacked by an extremely powerful demon king. White Yiksha did not answer. Instead, he seemed to be looking into the distance and muttered softly. At that time, I had been hesitating and unwilling to return the divinity to repel the attacking demon king. In the end, it caused No Name, the largest faction in the East District, to be destroyed by the demon king. It was too late for regrets. After saying that, White Yiksha looked at Noah, Letitia, and Pest and smiled faintly. This time, I will definitely not repeat the same mistake and let the East District suffer great damage because of my hesitation. As he said this, White Yiksha walked forward step by step in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. As White Yiksha walked, his aura would increase exponentially with every step he took. So, leave this place to me. I'll have to trouble you in the North District. Seeing that White Yiksha's aura were becoming more and more terrifying, so terrifying that even Noah could not help but become solemn, Letitia and Pest looked at Noah with cold sweat on their faces. Master Noah, Master, Letitia and Pest could not help but call out softly, finally dispelling the last trace of hesitation in Noah's heart. After taking a deep look at White Yiksha's back that was surging with an astonishing aura, Noah turned around and threw out this sentence. Let's go to the North District. In the next second, Noah, Letitia, and Pest turned into streams of light and flew in the direction of the realm gate. At the last moment before entering the realm gate and being teleported to the North District, Noah clearly felt it. An extremely terrifying power gradually formed in the sky above the entire East District. Chapter 1354. Box 54545 Outer Gate. Just like the outer sect serial numbers, this was a 5-digit level. In this 5-digit outer sect, there was a city. The name of the city was the City of Brilliant Flames. Just like the name of the city, one could see red and golden flames everywhere in the city. The flames were coming from 2 different parts. One was a huge chandelier hanging in the center of the city. One was the hot wind blowing out from the ironworks in the city. The former was a huge, warm chandelier with a diameter of more than 50 meters. In the Northern District, the climate was actually very harsh. Everyone relied on the gift of light and warmth to live in the extreme cold of the Northern District. Otherwise, ordinary humans would not be able to live here. In the capital of Brilliant Flames, it was that huge chandelier that brought warmth to the city and dyed the entire city into dusk. The latter was also a feature of the Northern District. Due to the harsh environment in the Northern District, the residents here valued the ability to produce their own products and ensure their eternal use. Therefore, in the cities of the Northern District, it was common to see ironworks that could produce and process all kinds of gifts used in daily life. The flames from these 2 characteristics illuminated the entire blazing flame capital with the color of dusk. The scene was quite beautiful. Unfortunately, in such a beautiful city, there was a conflict that could be described as a riot. This was because Blazing Flames City was the base of the 5-digit community, Salamandra. Caw, 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 caw. It was a group of deans who were as tall as birds. They were giants who held huge clubs and swords in their hands. They had the appearance of humans and wore masks on their faces. They looked like savages. If there was any difference between them and the savages, it would be that their bodies, which were taller than many buildings, gave off an astonishing sense of oppression. Amidst the tremors of the ground, they rushed in different directions. Bang! The buildings that were hit by the giants' club shattered like models. Kacha! The ground that was stomped by the giant's foot cracked open without any suspense. Caw, 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 caw. A group of giants, numbering in the hundreds or even thousands, were rushing back and forth on the streets of the entire blazing flame capital. They destroyed the buildings while attacking the surroundings. Of course, destroying buildings was not the goal of the giants. What the giants really wanted to attack was not the buildings, but the flying dragons flying back and forth around them. Roar, roar, roar. The winged dragons, covered in scales, issued deafening roars as they flew back and forth around the giants, roaring at them again and again. Every time the wyverns roared at the giants, a scorching flame breath would shoot out of the wyverns' mouths and envelop the giants. The giants' skin, hair, and even clothes were scorched black, causing them to howl in pain. Unfortunately, such flames were not enough to cause much damage to the giants. Therefore, the giants completely ignored the continuous burning of their bodies and wildly waved the weapons in their hands around. Bang! A wyvern was unfortunately struck by a huge club. Blood flowed out of its body as it fell to the ground like a kite with a broken string. The same scene kept happening in every corner of Brilliant Flame City. Clearly, the giants were gaining the upper hand in the battle between the giants and the wyverns, and the situation was constantly expanding. The scene of the giants and the wyverns fighting each other made the entire blazing flame capital seem like a sci-fi movie that could only be seen on the screen. It was extremely shocking. Although there were some giants who were unable to hold on and were turned into flaming men by the flame breath of the wyverns, the casualties were relatively light compared to the wyverns. If this continued, it would only be a matter of time before the wyverns all fell under the attacks of the giants. At this moment, the gate of Brilliant Flame City flashed with light. The moment Noah, Letitia, and Pest's group appeared, the scene that appeared before their eyes caused the three of them to narrow their eyes simultaneously. Noah could almost instantly tell who had the upper hand in the battle between the giants and the wyverns. Because of that, Noah directly ordered Letitia and Pest to attack. You two stay here and help the wyverns deal with the giants. I'll go to Salamandra's base to look for Shadora. In the world of the Black Bullet, Noah used his identity as the leader of the Cursed Child Guild that took in the entire Tokyo area to protect his children and companions from the decadent regime. In the world of the God Slayer, Noah used his identity as the king to visit many magic societies and ancient powers in Italy. In the underground tomb of Nasaric, Noah was treated as the highest ruler and ruler. He managed the entire Nasaric. Although he could not casually give out orders, it was natural for him to do so. There was not the slightest bit of unfamiliarity or inappropriateness. Therefore, as Noah's subordinates, Vampire and Grim Reaper subconsciously responded. Yes. After replying, Letitia unfurled her shadow-like wings. Pest also floated in the air in a somewhat vexed manner. The two of them turned into two rays of light and flew toward the battlefield in glorious Flame City. As for Noah, just as he was about to fly in the direction of Salamandra's base, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Noah's figure suddenly became sluggish. Without any hesitation, he turned around and waved his LV towards one of the directions. Level 5, and all of his strength was at the A stage of strength, and it was a full power attack. Whoosh! At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Noah, who had turned around abruptly, and punched out with a terrifying force. Dong! The collision between the fists caused a muffled sound that made people's hearts shrink. It was as if meteorites had collided with each other, setting off a violent shockwave that shook in all directions. Under this ferocious force, the ground directly exploded and caved in. Under this ferocious chi force, both parties who had punched out at the same time were fiercely shaken away. Like cannonballs, they rubbed against the air and scraped out a gully on the ground. They pulled apart a considerable distance before they came to a stop. After stabilizing his body, Noah slowly grasped his somewhat numb arm. He raised his head and looked forward. There, the young man who was also clenching his fist met Noah's gaze. The corner of his mouth rose, revealing a somewhat joyful smile. "We meet again." Hearing that, Noah narrowed his eyes. "We meet again." "Yes. We meet again." Although Noah could not see the other party's appearance because of the black robe last time, the familiar aura that he felt with his perception ability allowed Noah to easily recognize the young man. Are you the black-robed man last time?" "Sorry, I don't seem to have introduced myself." The young man raised his clenched fist and looked at Noah with a pair of golden eyes that flashed with light. "Although I can't say my real name, others call me Your Highness. Please take care of me." "Your Highness?" Noah straightened his body and spoke very calmly. "Since you can introduce yourself to me with such a title, then can I assume that this joint attack on the Demon King Alliance in the East, South, and North regions was ordered by you?" "You guessed wrong on this point," His Highness said without denying it. "Although I was called so great by others, I am not the one who actually made the decision. If I must say, I can only say that I have a little bit of status, right?" "I see." Noah first closed his eyes, then suddenly opened them. "Then, there is a reason to take you down." Chapter 1355. Take me down? Hearing Noah's words, His Highness raised his eyebrows, and the smile on his face gradually began to fade. "Well, that's not bad. After all, I wasn't too satisfied with the last battle, so it's not bad to continue here." Saying such a sentence, His Highness stared at Noah and took a step forward. With this step, a surging aura gushed out from His Highness' body, turning into a substantial wave of air, causing His Highness' robe to flutter. This aura was even more powerful than the last time when he fought Noah at No Name's base. And just as this thought flashed through Noah's mind, His Highness suddenly turned into a bolt of lightning with a bang. With a fierce force that caused the ground to sink, he flashed and appeared in front of Noah with an extremely powerful aura. In the next moment, His Highness clenched his right fist, and with a punch without any fancy moves, he heavily punched towards Noah's chest. This punch was ordinary and nothing special. However, under the fierce wind, where the wind from the punch passed, the air was all shaken away, making a deep sonic boom. Although it was just an ordinary punch, the power contained within it was likely that even a building would be blasted into powder in an instant. Noah's heart trembled slightly when he sensed the fist that was accompanied by an unusually sharp fist wind. Although he suppressed His Highness like last time, Noah knew that this guy who called himself His Highness might be more difficult to deal with than 16 knights. In terms of physical strength, His Highness estimated that he could match 16 knights, right? No. If His Highness was using his full strength, then the 16 knights reversal should still be able to suppress His Highness. If reverse 16 knights and His Highness were to fight, then reverse 16 knights should have the upper hand. However, Noah was not 16 knights, and his fighting style was not limited to close combat. It would be better to say that close combat was not Noah's forte. Noah's real strength was his sword skills, and the endless treasures in the Gate of Babylon. As for authority, that was Noah's trump card. Compared to these, close combat was indeed not Noah's strong point. Under such circumstances, Noah and His Highness' compatibility was really poor. With the gift of invulnerability that even the highest level treasures could not penetrate, Noah's sword skills and treasures were almost all sealed. In this way, the means of fighting against His Highness would become extremely limited. Thinking of this, Noah did not hesitate to turn the energy in his body into magical power, and used strengthening magic to strengthen his body's ability. Wang! Magical lines like electric lines spread from Noah's hands and feet. Noah's feet, he raised his hand. Pang! Amidst the muffled sound, a fist carrying a frightening wind heavily exploded on the raised arm, causing a circle of ripples to spread out from the center of the collision. The ordinary but powerful fist was solidly received by Noah. However, His Highness's expression was abnormally calm, as if he already knew that this kind of fist would not be able to do anything to Noah. With a step, he closed in on Noah. Immediately, His Highness seemed to have transformed into a ferocious beast, as he repeatedly waved his fists at Noah. The powerful energy was like an impact, accompanied by the wind from his fists, and fell in the direction of Noah like raindrops. Under His Highness's abnormally fierce attack, Noah's figure once again quickly retreated. As he retreated, Noah stared at the shadows of the fists that were coming at him like raindrops. It was as though he could see the path of the fists that were coming at him like a storm. He suddenly raised his arm. Peng 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 peng. A series of heavy collisions rang out, accompanied by a series of shockwaves that reverberated in the surroundings. That was Noah unhurriedly blocking his arm with the smallest amplitude and the shortest trajectory, as if he had calculated where His Highness's fists would fall, and continuously received the incoming fists. Suddenly, His Highness and Noah respectively advanced and retreated, one like a beast launching a storm-like attack, the other like a fluttering leaf in a storm, unhurriedly retreating and blocking, causing the energy generated by the collision to shake repeatedly, resounding throughout the entire space. Seeing that Noah was retreating and blocking at the same time, and had no intention of taking the initiative to attack, His Highness's brows were tightly knitted, and his figure pressed towards Noah in an even more ferocious manner. His fists carried a powerful force, turning into a sky full of fists, directly enveloping Noah. Looking at the scene, it was as if the area in front of Noah was covered by fists, which was abnormally strange. This was a strange scene that could only be created when the speed of the fist had reached the extreme. Facing the rapidly enveloping fists, at the moment when the fists were about to land on Noah's body, Noah's pair of pitch-black deep eyes suddenly flashed, and he actually ignored the numerous fists that were covering the sky and earth, and finally clenched one of his hands to his waist. Immediately, that fist was like an arrow that pierced through the air, tearing through the layers of fists. Finally, it fiercely slammed into a fist that was hidden behind the numerous fists, and seemed to be much more condensed than the other fists. The moment the two fists collided, the fists that filled the sky directly dissipated, causing an astonishing wave of air to erupt like a gale. In the next second, Noah finally took the initiative to make a move for the first time since the beginning of the match. Taking advantage of the moment when His Highness's figure was slightly stagnant due to the full force of the punch, Noah suddenly withdrew his hand that had collided with His Highness's fist, and with a stomp of his foot, his entire body suddenly charged forward. The distance between Noah and His Highness was originally less than 2 meters. Therefore, Noah's charge almost didn't even take the blink of an eye, and his entire person flashed into His Highness's arms, and directly crashed into him without any reduction in momentum. In the midst of the muffled sound, Noah's body leaned sideways, and his shoulder heavily collided with His Highness's chest. His Highness suddenly groaned, and his body became unstable, and he fiercely retreated a few steps. It was also at this moment that Noah directly turned around, and in the direction of His Highness, who was staggering backwards, sent out a powerful kick. A deep sound rang out in the field. His Highness was directly sent flying by Noah's kick. Whoosh! In the sharp sound of breaking through the air, His Highness, who had turned into a cannonball, rubbed against the air, and heavily smashed into the wall of a building in the distance. The entire building, together with the wall, was smashed into pieces. As a result, the smashed building turned into rubble that filled the sky, and collapsed, burying His Highness's figure that was much smaller than the building itself. However, in the next second, the buried pile of rubble suddenly burst open. Inside, His Highness's body was like a bullet that shot out of a barrel, and violently shot in front of Noah. This time, it was His Highness's turn to unceremoniously slam into Noah's body. It was like a collision between two meteorites. Amidst the sound of the collision that made one's scalp numb, this time, it was Noah's body that was sent flying. He turned into a cannonball and slammed heavily into a lighthouse, breaking it in half and collapsing it. After the blessing of LV5 ability value and the strengthening of magic, Noah's physical ability was probably comparable to that of Reverse 16 Knights, who broke the rules. As for His Highness, although he was a little weaker than Reverse 16 Knights, the gap was not so big that it was unimaginable. Therefore, in a pure hand-to-hand battle, the advantage of both sides was not particularly obvious. In this way, both Noah and His Highness were ruthless. In the next moment, the ground was trampled by a terrifying force, causing a heavy sound. Two figures blasted out separately, rushing towards each other at an extremely fast speed that was not much inferior to the speed of Universe 3. Chapter 1356. Dong. The collision seemed to shake the air, causing the ground to tremble. Like living meteorites, Noah and His Highness both had burning eyes and were filled with fighting spirit as they faced each other. Peng 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 peng. The muffled sounds that would hurt people's ears kept echoing in the space. At this moment, the two seemingly ordinary fists continued to greet each other, but they kept colliding with each other. Peng 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 peng. Like heavy rhythmic syllables, the intense muffled sounds kept rising. At this moment, the two sides who were constantly waving their fists at each other intertwined, entangled, and separated in the space. They kept repeating the same action, causing the atmosphere in the air to become extremely fierce. After all, no matter which side it was, their strength was overwhelming. That fist, once swung out, would shake the air. That fist, once hit, would cause an impact. Affected by that kind of power, the ground had already sunk down repeatedly, causing spiderweb-like cracks to spread out continuously on the ground. It was quite a shocking scene. If one was hit by that kind of power, it was believed that even those who were confident in their physical strength would be turned into a pile of minced meat in an instant. Because that kind of power, even if it brushed past the body, would cause an ordinary person's skin to burst open. Because that kind of power, even if it hit the skull, would cause the hard skull to shatter like tofu. However, Noah and His Highness, who were both facing this kind of power, were completely fearless as they faced each other. In the face of a fist that could shake the air and scratch the skin, they also gathered all the strength in their body and bounced it off. In the face of a blow that could smash the skull at any time, they resisted it head-on with their burning immortal fighting spirit. Peng 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 peng. The muffled sounds were incessant. Their arm strength was the same. Their leg strength was the same. Even their physical abilities were almost the same in all aspects. Under such circumstances, Noah and His Highness could only wave their fists, and continuously wave their fists, greeting each other with punches without any fancy moves. After all, when both sides had the same strength, there were only two ways to determine the outcome of the battle. The other was to win by using one's wits to launch a surprise attack. One was a contest of perseverance, to see who could hold on until the end without collapsing. If he didn't do so, it would be impossible to determine the outcome of the battle when both parties had almost the same amount of power. Therefore, Noah and Her Highness could only carry a burning fighting spirit as they swung their fists at each other again and again. Every time they collided, they would be able to incite a violent force that would shatter the earth, break through the atmosphere, shatter the buildings, distort the space, and turn the places they passed into ruins. Presumably, no matter who it was, if they suddenly got involved, they would be affected, right? If it was an ordinary person, they would have been directly engulfed by the shockwave like a meat grinder, spraying blood and minced meat all over the sky. This was how intense the battle was. However, those who fully understood Noah would definitely find this battle situation inconceivable. Why? Because, even if his sword techniques and treasures were sealed by the invulnerability, Noah still had a trump card called authority. That trump card, once taken out, should be able to reverse the battle situation in an instant, right? However, for some reason, undoubtedly, even at this stalemate, Noah still did not have the thought of using his authority. No. It was not that he did not have the thought of using it. In fact, Noah had long wanted to use his authority, to take down Her Highness in one fell swoop. However, for some reason, every time Noah wanted to use his authority, an inexplicable uneasiness would attack his heart, causing him to instantly dispel the idea. As a result, the battle situation remained in this stalemate. Not knowing if it was because she saw the uneasiness in Noah's heart, Her Highness, who had taken advantage of the situation, stared at Noah's face and suddenly smiled. You seem to have a good intuition, and vaguely felt something, so you have been suppressing your true strength, right? Hearing this, Noah's heart tightened, and his footsteps suddenly staggered as he retreated rapidly. However, Her Highness did not seem to give up. She turned into a bullet and continued to attack Noah. However, your intuition is right. If you use the same strength that you used last time, I can only use my trump card to respond. In this way, that guy will definitely wake up from his long slumber. What's more, if our strength collides and produces too great a shockwave, that guy's seal will be destroyed in the worst-case scenario. Then, we'll be screwed. Zhang Tai said. Zhang Tai continued, but, your intuition is right. If you use the same strength as you did last time, I can only use my trump card to respond to you. That guy? Seal? Noah maintained his retreat as he stared at Her Highness, who was fiercely attacking him, and said in a deep voice. In other words, in this capital of flames, there is something terrifying sealed? Well, what exactly is it? Her Highness said unhurriedly. Although I still understand the actual situation, it has been less than 3 years since I was born. Even if I have some knowledge, it is only knowledge that was given along with my birth. Even if you ask me, I can only give you a rough idea, right? What? Noah's expression changed for the first time since the beginning of the battle. It has been less than 3 years since I was born. What kind of joke is this? Of course, Her Highness understood why Noah was so surprised. In this regard, Her Highness acted as if she was not talking about her own affairs. While rushing towards Noah, who was retreating rapidly, she said very casually. Don't doubt it, this is the truth. I didn't grow up as a baby, but I had the form of a teenager when I was born, and I was given the knowledge that must be used to grow up as a baby. There are no parents who gave birth to me and raised me, so this is how it is. Hearing this, Noah's eyes fluctuated violently, and he suddenly stopped retreating. Her Highness was slightly startled, but almost like a conditioned reflex, she punched at Noah, who suddenly stopped. Pung! Along with an unknown number of muffled sounds, Her Highness' fist was suddenly caught by Noah's palm. Noah just stared at Her Highness' face, which was much more immature compared to his own, and couldn't help but murmur. I see, you are the same as me? Noah's words made Her Highness completely stunned on the spot. Same? What did he mean by that? Facing Her Highness' doubts, Noah just blinked his eyes and said faintly. Don't think so much, just like the literal meaning, I am the same as you. There are no parents who gave birth to me and raised me, and I am not a life that grew up as a baby. Instead, I had the form of a teenager when I was born, and I was given the necessary knowledge. Noah's words had an unexpected impact on Her Highness. You. What did you say? Her Highness subconsciously said. But undoubtedly, you are a human? That's right, I am a human, and I have always thought that I am a human. Noah's pair of dark and deep eyes showed a strong will. Although I did not experience the life that a human should have as a baby, and did not have parents who gave birth to me and raised me, I have a grandfather who adopted me, and companions who grew up with me. Saying such a sentence, Noah slowly tightened his grip on Her Highness' fist that fell into his palm. Since I also have a family, relatives, and even a lover that an ordinary human should have, then it doesn't matter why I am so special. Hearing this, Her Highness opened her eyes wide, and then, as if she understood something, she suddenly laughed. So that's the case, this is why I am so obsessed with you, this is what I don't have? Saying this, Her Highness' eyes showed a hostility that had never been seen before. Undoubtedly, you and I are the same, but you exist as a person, and I am just a tool. Saying this, Her Highness broke free from Noah's palm, and in a flash, retreated. In that case, let's end this boring farce here. Chapter 1357. As if he didn't want to be entangled with Noah any longer, His Highness looked at Noah with unprecedented indifference. Although the aura on his body was fading little by little, the hostility did not decrease. Instead, it increased. Although it's very likely that the guy sealed here will wake up if I revive the game here, or even break the seal, it's not in line with my character if I don't use the chess piece in my hand. Let's start right away. After saying this, His Highness didn't give Noah any time to react and directly looked to his side. There, a figure suddenly flashed out without any warning. It was a playful and cute girl. Just like when he faced His Highness, Noah almost immediately recognized the girl's aura with his sensing ability. That aura was exactly the same as the other black-robed person who suddenly appeared beside His Highness at the end of the battle at No Name's base. It was similar to the aura of the other black-robed person who suddenly teleported His Highness away. That girl was Ling. However, in Ling's arms, there was a girl who seemed to have lost consciousness. Her whole body was powerless as she was hugged by Ling. That young girl had a head of dazzling golden hair that was as resplendent as the sun, and she wore a maid's uniform that was alternating between black and white. It was Letitia. Looking at the powerless Letitia lying in Ling's arms, Noah's face gradually darkened. His gaze towards Ling was shockingly cold. Wah! So scary. Ling seemed to be frightened by Noah's extremely cold gaze and took a few steps back with a stiff expression. That brother seems to be more difficult to deal with than I thought, Your Highness. I don't need you to tell me about this kind of thing. His Highness said expressionlessly. Ling, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Belle's cute face tensed up. But, Your Highness, are we really going to use it? It might break that guy's seal. I was a little hesitant at first, but now, there's no need to hesitate. His Highness said coldly. In any case, we've already planned to the end. If there's really no other way, then we'll just directly remove that guy's seal. There's no need to hesitate anymore. Since Your Highness says so. Ring fell silent for a moment before nodding. That's the only thing we can do. Hearing this, Noah had a bad premonition. Intuition told Noah. Now was the best time to take Letitia back. As soon as this thought appeared in Noah's mind, Noah chose to carry it out without any hesitation. Thus, in Noah's heart, the stone plate with the 10 patterns connected to it suddenly turned and pointed to the pattern of a divine bird spreading its wings. It was the incarnation of the phoenix. As long as he could enter the seraphic speed world and achieve the true meaning of lightning speed by shortening the movement time, he would definitely be able to seize back Letitia before His Highness and Belle could react. However, Belle was also a decisive person. After obtaining His Highness's permission, Belle no longer hesitated and chose to carry out the order. In the end, Noah was one step too late. In the sky above Huang Yen City, the sky suddenly trembled and was shrouded by a large dark cloud that suddenly appeared without any warning. Rumble. In the thick dark clouds, dense lightning began to move and dyed the sky above Huang Yen City into a flashing blue and white color. Noticing this abnormality, everyone in Huang Yen City raised their heads and looked at the sky. Including Noah. In the next second, a scene that did not exist in reality appeared in front of everyone. The dark sky that was covered by thick dark clouds suddenly split into two halves. Soon after, a huge head stretched out from the two halves of the sky. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked at the head that was poking out from the split sky. Although Noah was not stunned, his pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. What kind of head was that? In short, it was a huge dragon head. It was not the ferocious dragon head that was unique to the West, but the divine dragon head that was unique to the East. The size of such a dragon head was comparable to that of Huang Yen City below. It could even cover the sky and the sun. In the next moment, a pair of scarlet eyes suddenly opened on the huge dragon head that covered the sky and the sun. Roar, 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 roar. Everyone in Huang Yen City was shocked. The space was distorted and turned into a huge sound wave that attacked the city below like a storm. The terrifying roar reverberated between heaven and earth. At this moment, a terrifying pressure that was almost solid descended from the sky and shrouded the entire Huang Yen City. Under such pressure, above the dark sky, one could faintly see the divine dragon's head that covered the sky and the sun. A silhouette that looked like a castle slowly descended. A huge dragon and a castle. In the sky, the dreamy scene was reflected in the eyes of everyone in Huangyan City. Everyone was frozen on the spot and could not move at all. However, Noah could understand their feelings. Staring at the huge dragon's head that covered the sky, Noah's voice seemed like it would disappear in the wind at any time as he uttered word by word. Pure-blooded, dragon species, yes. Pure-blooded dragon species. That huge dragon was one of the 3 strongest species in the box court. At this moment, a voice that sounded like pain and struggle lightly sounded and entered Noah's ears. Master. Hearing this voice, Noah trembled and turned his head abruptly to look in Belle's direction. Letitia, who was lying in Belle's arms powerlessly, exuded a strange light all over her body. She raised her head with difficulty and stared at Noah with a pair of wine-red eyes as she squeezed out such a sentence. Aim, for the 13th, son. Leaving behind such a sentence, Letitia completely turned into a ray of light, suddenly rushed into the sky, and violently shot towards the horizon. Noah could only watch as Letitia, who had turned into a ray of light, was swallowed up by the dragon's head that blotted out the sky. Roar, 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 roar. The giant dragon seemed to have gained life as it let out an even more violent roar, causing a terrifying sound wave to reverberate between heaven and earth. Inside, pieces of black parchment suddenly took shape and fell down like raindrops. Bestowed game name, SUNSWNCHRONOUSORBATIN VM Kanji contestants view. All life forms caught in the beast belt. Note, when the beast belt disappears, the game will be suspended indefinitely. Conditions for the participant to lose: none. Death will not be considered as a loss. Prohibited items on the participant's side: none. Participant punishment clause 1. A time limit will be set for all participants who have fought against the game leader. Participant punishment clause 2. The time limit will be reset every 10 days and will continue to cycle. Participant punishment clause 3. The punishment will be randomly selected from impalement, crucifixion, and burning. Participant punishment clause 4. The removal method will only be applied when the game is cracked and interrupted. Participant punishment clause 5. The death of the participant is not included in the removal conditions, and will be permanently punished. Organizers' victory conditions: none. Participants' victory conditions: 1. Kill the game leader, Demon King Dracula. Participants' victory conditions: 2. Kill the game leader, Letitia D. Cray. Participants' victory conditions: 3. Collect the shattered stars and offer the beast belt to the throne. Participants' victory conditions: 4. Follow the guidance of the beast belt to return to the throne in the correct form, and pierce the heart of the revolutionary leader who is bound by iron chains. Oath: respect the above content, based on glory, flag, and organizer's authority. Host the bestowed game. Seal. Chapter 1358. Bestowed game name, SUNSWNCHRONUSORBATIN VM Kanji contestant view. All life forms caught in the beast belt. Note, in the event that the beast belt disappears, the game will be suspended indefinitely. Contestant defeat conditions: none. Death will not be regarded as defeat. Contestant prohibitions: none. Contestant penalty clause 1. A time limit will be set for all contestants who have fought with the game leader. Contestant penalty clause 2. The time limit will be reset every 10 days and will continue to cycle. Contestant penalty clause 3. The punishment will be randomly selected from impalement, crucifixion, and burning. Contestant penalty clause 4. The removal method will only be applied when the game has been cracked and interrupted. Contestant penalty clause 5. The death of the contestant is not included in the removal conditions and will be permanently punished. Host victory conditions: none. Contestant victory conditions: kill the game leader Demon King Dracula. Contestant victory conditions: kill the game leader Letitia D. Cray. Contestant victory conditions: collect the shattered starry sky and offer the beast belt to the throne. Contestant victory conditions: follow the correct form of the beast belt, to return to the throne and pierce the chained heart of the revolutionary leader. Oath, respect the above content, based on honor, flag, and host authority, host the bestowed game. Seal. It had to be said that the content of the game recorded in the pitch-black contract that fell from the sky was very absurd. Absurd to the point of being unreasonable. Especially the part that described the punishment clause. It was obviously emitting the most intense malice. Not only was there a time limit of 10 days, once the time limit was reached, the contestant would be randomly subjected to impalement, crucifixion, or burning. One of the 3 terrible punishments was not allowed to be removed even after death. It was like whipping a corpse, once every 10 days, and could only be removed after the game was cracked. This kind of malicious and twisted penalty clause was simply enough to arouse the anger of the heavens and the resentment of the people. As a game, it was impossible for such a punishment clause to exist. However, the organizer had given up on the possibility of winning, and also gave up on letting the contestants lose. In the end, there was no reward, no gain, and these angry punishment clauses were added into the game. This was a game that existed only for the sake of violence. In the end, either the organizer or the participant would die. There was no room for negotiation or compromise. Therefore, all the people who had obtained the contract documents in Brilliant Flame City turned pale in a split second. Their faces were full of terror. Noah, who was holding a pitch-black contract document that recorded the game's content, also lowered his head, letting the fringe on his forehead cover his expression. The contract stated that the leader of the game was Letitia. In that case, there was no need to guess who the organizer of this game was. Letitia once said, in the past, in order to avenge her clansmen who died in the civil strife, she once degenerated into a demon king and held a game that existed only for the sake of revenge. In the end, although no name's former companions managed to free Letitia, they weren't able to crack Letitia's game. Instead, they used the method of indefinitely delaying the game as stated in the contract to separate Letitia from the game itself, sealing Letitia's game. Then, there was no need to explain the current situation. His Highness and Belle captured Letitia and used Letitia as a medium to unlock Letitia's sealed game, allowing this game that existed only for the sake of revenge to reappear in the world. From the beginning, His Highness and Belle had been scheming against Noah. They clearly knew that if the East, South, and North regions were attacked at the same time, the young ruler of the social class, Shadora, would be targeted and fall into a complete disadvantage. They also calculated that in the end, the only person who could change the situation by themselves was Noah. Therefore, they directly came to the North region. In order to wait for Noah's arrival. And also to wait for Letitia's arrival. The people called the Demon King Alliance, which meant that His Highness and Belle had long planned to use Letitia's game to attack the entire North region, and in the end, attack the East and South regions. Their goal shouldn't be hard to guess. Whether it was the East, South, or North region, the only ones that were attacked were the rulers of the social class and their substitutes. Then, the Demon King Alliance's goal should be to defeat the rulers of the social class and promote another person to become the ruler of the social class. Once the ruler of the social class became the ruler of the social class, they would be able to obtain the sovereignty of the sun. That was the goal of the Demon King Alliance. It was also the goal of His Highness and Belle. Noah lowered his hand and slowly let go of the pitch-black contract in his hand, allowing it to float to the ground. Then, Noah raised his feet and lowered his head, walking step by step towards His Highness and Belle. His Highness and Belle, who originally thought that Noah would be angry and attack, saw Noah silently walking towards them step by step, and an inexplicable tremble emerged in their hearts. Then, a soft voice entered His Highness and Belle's ears. Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse, and the evil will not be able to hit me, the powerful voice echoed in the air, causing the trembling in His Highness and Belle's heart to suddenly reach its peak. Your Highness. Belle couldn't help but shout. Retreat. As soon as his voice subsided. Buzz. Noah, who was slowly walking in the direction of His Highness and Belle, was suddenly covered by a flash of light. His figure was like a mirage as he abruptly rushed out. With this dash, a series of human-shaped shadows flashed behind Noah's back. With bursts of light and shadow, Noah flashed in front of His Highness with unprecedented speed. His Highness only saw a blur before Noah's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Bang! Accompanied by a muffled sound, a fist heavily bombarded His Highness' chest at an almost impossible speed. Go! His Highness groaned, and before he could even react, his whole body was directly sent flying upside down. However, Noah once again carried a burst of light and shadow. With a speed that couldn't be seen by the naked eye, like a flash of light, he instantly swept above His Highness, who was still flying upside down in midair. With a spin, as if he was diving down, his fist fiercely landed on His Highness' body. Bang! With this punch, His Highness, who was still flying upside down in midair, was smashed to the ground together with Noah, who had punched His Highness. Both of them smashed a crater into the ground. Pfft! His Highness finally spat out a mouthful of blood, and his mind was completely blank. What's wrong? What happened? Why did Noah's speed suddenly become so terrifying? This question had not been answered at all, but His Highness felt it. His collar was fiercely grabbed by a hand, and he was lifted up from the crater-like crater. At this moment, His Highness tried his best to open his blood-stained eyelids. Imprinted in His Highness' eyes was Noah's face. Straddling His Highness, Noah lifted His Highness' upper body from the gravel by the collar. He raised a fist, and his face was filled with a violent expression. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I shall obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power of dragon slaying. In Noah's mind, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns suddenly turned, and pointed to the incarnation of the Dragon Emperor. Then, Noah's raised fist fell down. Boom! In the roar, the ground seemed to collapse, and layer by layer, it sank down. Chapter 1359. At this moment, the entire brilliant flame capital seemed to have encountered an earthquake and began to tremble. Kacha kacha kacha. Accompanied by cracking sounds that made one's teeth ache, cracks spread out on the streets of Huangyan City. In the blink of an eye, they covered half of the entire city. In such a violent vibration, the fire dragon that had the ability to fly was another matter, but the giants were shaken to the ground one by one, causing a burst of miserable howls. As for the center of the cracks that almost covered half of the entire Huangyan City, the ground was sinking layer by layer as if it was collapsing. The scene was extremely shocking. The incarnation named Dragon Emperor was one of the more complicated effects in Noah's authority. Compared with the other incarnations that generally only had 1 or 2, or at most 2 or 3 effects, the Dragon Emperor, among the 10 incarnations, had a total of 5 effects. 1. Able to transform the body into the physique of a dragon and exercise the power comparable to a giant dragon. 2. Able to have the power of dragon kill that causes great damage to dragons. 3. Able to obtain the ability of air scale that has a defensive power comparable to a giant dragon's dragon scales. 4. Able to let people have a close combat ability that surpasses wildness and intuition. 5. Able to materialize the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear and exercise the ability to multiply and transfer. However, although the abilities were complicated, in a nutshell, using this incarnation, Noah would instantly become a humanoid giant dragon that could multiply and transfer his own power and cause great damage to his own kind. After such a long time of self-enhancement of authority, the power of the current Dragon Emperor had far exceeded the past. Coupled with the blessing of Noah's LV5 ability value, the two were superimposed. With this punch, even a small hill could be smashed into pieces, right? Under the bombardment of such power, the ground with a diameter of more than 1,000 meters collapsed in the most direct way, causing the gravel in the sky to explode. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. In the bursts of roars, the gravel fell in all directions. It was unknown how long this scene lasted. When everything calmed down, Noah's chest heaved up and down slightly in the center of the crater. With a face full of anger, he withdrew his fist that was deeply buried in the ground and lifted his other hand. Suddenly, in front of Noah, a pile of rubble was separated by Noah's movement. That was because Noah's hand was still holding onto the collar of a piece of clothing. With some strength, he pulled out the owner of the clothing that he had punched into the ground. That person was naturally His Highness. However, at this moment, His Highness was in a terrible state. Not only were his clothes tattered, but his skin was also cracked open. A large amount of blood continuously flowed out from His Highness's skin, dyeing His Highness into a bloody person. Not only that, but a large amount of blood was flowing out of His Highness' mouth. Even the corners of his eyes and nose were bleeding. It was simply too horrible to look at. Faced with such a miserable His Highness, Noah did not hide the anger in his heart and spoke coldly. "You're right, we're the same, but I exist as a human. Therefore, as a human, I'll clearly tell you, undoubtedly, that this is the price you have to pay for attacking my companion." With such a sentence, Noah lifted His Highness, who was covered in blood, with one hand and raised his other hand high again. "Go and repent in hell." Just as Noah's terrifying punch was about to land on His Highness' body again, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air was suddenly heard. A few short knives suddenly cut through the sky and flew over at an astonishing speed. It was as if they had pierced through space and shot toward Noah, who had raised his fist high up in the air. Feeling the sound of something breaking through the air behind him and the sharp weapons approaching at an extremely fast speed, Noah's hand movements paused slightly, and he glanced behind him. On his body, a burst of crimson-red air waves suddenly shook. It was a wave of air that resembled a crimson dragon-shaped armor. The air wave turned into a crimson dragon man, as if it had covered Noah's body. The sudden appearance of the dragon man caused ripples in the air. That was the air scale after fusing with the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gears balance breaker. Clang 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 clang. The few short knives that fell on the crimson air scale caused a crisp sound of collision, splashing a burst of sparks, and then they were all knocked away. After all, they were just ordinary short knives, and were not enough to break through Noah's air scale. However, the opponent did not want to cause harm to Noah, but wanted to stop Noah's attack. In the next moment, Noah felt the weight in his hands suddenly disappear. Her Highness, who had been completely covered in blood while being carried by Noah, suddenly disappeared. Seeing this, Noah's eyes flashed. He closed his eyes and expanded his senses. Unfortunately, His Highness's aura had long since disappeared. Even Ling had disappeared. Clearly, when Noah was about to deal the final blow to Her Highness, Belle used her mysterious grace to take Her Highness away. Moreover, the other party seemed to be fully aware of how dangerous Noah was. They immediately fled with His Highness, completely disappearing without a trace. Did he escape? Noah suppressed the anger in his heart and took a deep breath to calm himself down. "I will remember what happened today. Little brat who calls himself Your Highness, don't give me a chance to settle the score." After saying those words, Noah raised his head and looked at the sky. Roar, 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 roar. The gigantic dragon head that poked its head out from the split sky kept roaring at the blazing flame capital below. The sound waves turned into waves of wind that blew across the entire city like a storm. Noah cancelled the use of the Dragon Emperor avatar and flew towards the sky. When the war in Huang Flame's city was escalating, a pair of red jade-like eyes suddenly opened in the depth of a volcano in Huang Flame's city where even light and sound couldn't reach. What kind of eyes were those? In terms of appearance, it could be likened to a red bead embedded in a broken wall. However, this pair of red jade-like eyes contained a gaze that no one could understand. It was a gaze that could not be described as ruthless. It was an expression that could not be described as ferocious. If one had to find a word to describe this expression, there was only one word. Terror. It was a gaze that could make an ordinary person's heart explode with the most primitive terror the moment they saw it. The owner of this pair of eyes slowly raised his head and looked towards the pitch-black sky, as if he could see the conflict on the ground far away. Along with this action of raising its head, the sound of chains clanging echoed in the air. That was natural. Because the thick and somewhat unnecessary iron chains were wrapped around its limbs and penetrated them, causing its limbs to be sewn into the rock wall. Although there was no blood, anyone who saw this scene would believe that the iron chain that was so tight that it had sunk into the flesh would bring indescribable pain to it, right? However, that kind of thing was of no importance to it. Compared to the physical pain, it could not accept the fact that it could not bring despair and terror to the world. However, that was not important. As if it felt something, it opened its mouth and revealed its sharp and terrifying fangs. He had comprehended. Perhaps it was not far from seeing the light of day again. It's time to welcome the final trial, me, human heroes. The voice kept echoing and did not calm down for a long time. Chapter 1360. Whoosh. Withstanding the whistling atmosphere, Noah's body turned into a ray of light and soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, he arrived high in the sky and looked at the horizon. Roar, 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 roar. The huge dragon head that peeked out from the sky that had been split into two was still roaring. Just this alone had formed a storm that was comparable to a disaster, bathing the entire blazing flame capital in the violent storm. It seemed like it could be blown away at any time, and it was on the verge of collapse. Nobody knew whether it was disdain or deliberate, but the huge dragon's head didn't seem to have any intention of charging down from the clouds. It was only roaring there. If the huge dragon really wanted to attack Raging Flame Capital, then it only needed to charge toward Raging Flame Capital and Raging Flame Capital would be turned into ashes. After all, just the head of the huge dragon was already comparable to the size of an entire city. Then, how big was the body of the huge dragon that was still in the clouds? Just thinking about it was enough to make people tremble. If that was the case, the people in Raging Flame Capital should rejoice. Rejoice that the huge dragon didn't attack Raging Flame Capital. However, it shouldn't be that the huge dragon didn't want to attack. Instead, it should be that it didn't want to attack for the time being. Noah could tell. Although that huge dragon was a pure-blooded dragon species, it didn't have any intelligence or intelligence. Speaking of which, why would a pure-blooded dragon species appear in Letitia's game? Why would Letitia be swallowed by that huge dragon? I still don't know the reason behind these. Noah raised his head and looked at the huge dragon that was letting out a world-shaking roar. His eyes were filled with uncertainty. Could it be that the main body of that huge dragon is actually, just when Noah had some guesses in his heart, another figure flew out from Raging Flame Capital. Accompanied by a burst of black wind, the figure arrived beside Noah. Who else could it be other than Pest? Pest was holding the pitch-black contract in her hand. Her complexion was pale as she looked at the huge dragon that covered the sky. Then, she turned her gaze and looked at Noah. Her voice was hoarse as she spoke. Has Letitia's game been restarted? It would appear that Pest also knew about the matter regarding Letitia. Noah did not answer Pest's question. Instead, he stared at the roaring dragon and spoke in a low voice. How's the situation in Glorious Flame Capital? Shadora and Mandela seem to have defeated the Demon King controlling the giant tribe. They have split up to deal with the giants wreaking havoc in the city. Pest was silent for a moment before answering truthfully. In addition, Letitia and I have defeated many giants before this. The defeat of the giants is only a matter of time. Hearing this, Noah stared at the gigantic dragon that covered the sky and said. In other words, all that's left is to solve Letitia's problem, right? That's right, Pest answered subconsciously. Then, she seemed to have realized something and was shocked. Do you want to fight that pure-blooded dragon? If that was the case, Pest could not help but feel astonished. That was a pure-blooded dragon, an existence known as one of the 3 most powerful races. Conservatively speaking, an existence like that was at the apex of the 4-digit number. It might even be a terrifying existence in the 3-digit number. Fight against such an existence? Ignoring everything else, if Pest were to fight against such an existence, even if she possessed the body of a god, she would still be torn to pieces in an instant. She would be deader than dead. How could one possibly fight against such an existence? Of course, with the strength that Noah had displayed earlier, he might really be able to fight against that gigantic dragon. However, in Pest's opinion, there was no solution more foolish than directly fighting against the strongest species right from the start. The urgent matter at hand was not to think about how to fight against such an existence. Instead, it was to take advantage of the fact that the other party had yet to launch an attack to defeat the giant tribe and then think of a way to solve the game. Since the gigantic dragon appeared together with the game that Letitia held, the gigantic dragon should also disappear when the game was solved. That was the most suitable method for now. Naturally, Noah understood that. However, at a time when he still did not know how Letitia was doing, leisurely sitting down and thinking about how to solve the game's puzzle was something that Noah could not do. At the very least, he should confirm whether Letitia was doing well or not. Thinking up to this point, Noah turned his gaze and looked in another direction. It was a castle floating in midair above the gigantic dragon. A castle? Noah's eyes flickered. Could that be the ancient city of the vampires? Noah had heard Letitia mention before that before the internal strife of the vampires began, the vampires known as the Knights of the Box all lived in a floating castle. After Letitia degenerated into a demon king, she held the most ferocious revenge game and annihilated all the traitors that started the internal strife. After that, the castle was reduced to a demonic realm that was solely occupied by Letitia, known as the last king of the vampires. It was feared by the people of the box. In other words, before Letitia was separated from the game, Letitia had been living in the floating vampire castle. Later on, when Letitia was separated from the game, that castle was sealed together with the game. Now, as the game restarted, that ancient vampire castle seemed to have been resummoned. In that case, is it very possible that Letitia is up there? Noah immediately came to a decision. Pest, let's go check out the castle. A castle? Pest looked to the floating castle and sighed. Understood. After he finished saying those words, Noah turned into a ray of light. As for Pest, she turned into a burst of black wind and began to fly toward the direction of the floating ancient castle. Rumble. The closer they got to the dark clouds, the more violent the lightning that flashed back and forth in the clouds. The deafening sound of thunder continuously reverberated in the surroundings, causing pain in the eardrums of those who heard it. Noah and Pest deliberately took a detour around the enormous dragon. First, they flew into the thick clouds at a distance away from the enormous dragon. Then, they made a turn and flew toward the ancient castle floating above the enormous dragon. Gradually, as Noah and Pest approached the ancient castle, it grew bigger and bigger. This proved that Noah and Pest were rapidly approaching the location of the ancient castle. If this were to continue, the two of them should be able to enter the vampire castle soon. That is, if nothing were to stop them. Noah, who was flying toward the direction of the castle, suddenly sensed something. His eyes narrowed and he came to a stop. Pest immediately stopped as well. She asked in confusion. What's wrong? Noah did not say anything. He merely looked in the direction of the ancient castle, leading Pest's gaze to follow him. Only at this moment did Pest notice something. Not far from the vampire's castle, a strange black dot had appeared. It was a completely pitch-black shadow that seemed to be able to absorb all light. Like a swamp, it was wriggling non-stop and changing its appearance. That's right. It was a shadow. Shrinking, changing, expanding. It was a shadow that was repeating these actions non-stop. It was like a malicious spirit that had crawled up from the dark abyss. Darkness and formless killing intent surged all over its body. Pest spoke in astonishment when she saw that shadow. What is that? Not long after, she obtained the answer to her question. Rumble. Thunder continued to rise and fall in the sky. With the rumbling thunder as the background, the pitch-black shadow took the form of a human. It quietly stood before the floating castle and entered Noah and Pest's line of sight. A coat that gave off the air of a ruler was fluttering in the wind. The dazzling lightning illuminated the long golden hair that was as bright as sunlight. Pest's face stiffened when she saw that figure. Noah muttered softly as he stared at the figure. Letitia, you're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.